Chapter 51:12. At the end of the day, Old Man Lin was his only relative. Since he was going to set the island as his base camp in the future, he had to let Old Man Lin have a look. As for Lin Yi, he went to another place. He wanted to meet Big Brother Doffing in person. In the vast sea, a luxurious cruise ship sailed slowly. Its speed was almost slowed to the limit. From a distance, it did not seem to be moving at all. It looks luxurious on the outside, but there are mysteries hidden inside. No one would have thought that such a luxurious cruise ship is actually a branch of the Red Conches. Big Brother Doffing, you're really bold. Lin Yi leaned on the railing and looked into the distance. The blue sky and the sea stretched as far as the eye could see. Even with his eyesight, he could not find a third thing. Heh, boss, don't underestimate this luxury ship of mine. It's using the most advanced technology, and all communication signals are extremely secretive. Even the satellites in the sky won't be able to detect it. This is international waters, too, so they won't be able to reach that far. Doffing Bro chuckled behind him. I mean, you actually dared to ask me to come here. Aren't you afraid of being discovered? Linny glanced at him. The people he had to be wary of were naturally the people in the center. Be it the Red Conches or the Firewolves, the two were the same organization. They were both branches of the center. For Big Brother Doffing, the real danger came from the center's headquarters. After all, he was now Lin Yi's spy. Boss Lin Yi, don't worry. The people in this cruise ship branch are all trustworthy. Furthermore, the branch has a lot of autonomy. As long as we don't take the initiative to report, even the headquarters won't know our exact location, Big Brother Doffing said confidently. Oh? Then do you know the exact location of the center's headquarters? Linny asked. Ever since he discovered the Chamber of Commerce in the center on Heaven Island, his interest in the center had grown. It was rare for his primordial spirit to be projected back to the secular world. If there was a chance, he planned to infiltrate the center's headquarters to investigate. I really don't know about this. Rumor has it that the location of the central headquarters is not fixed. Only the people in the headquarters know the exact location. Big Brother Doffing shook his head and smiled bitterly. All these years, the central headquarters has let us do whatever we want, and we're also very secretive about the central headquarters. Aside from the routine report every once in a while, we basically have no interaction with them. Even if it's a routine report, it's only through satellite communication. To be honest, I still don't know what my superior looks like. Then can you think of a way? Linny couldn't help but frown. The central organization was actually so cautious in their actions. They didn't even reveal the slightest flaw to their own subordinate organization. It was really unexpected. To be honest, Boss Lin Yi, ever since I received the letter you sent from Heaven Island 2 years ago, I've been trying in this regard. I've tried many methods, but none of them succeeded. Half a year ago, I was the closest to success. My superior was ready to summon me to the headquarters, but I don't know why I was suddenly stopped. Thinking about it, it's a pity. Big Brother Doffing couldn't help but sigh. It wasn't just to spy for Lin Yi. In fact, even he himself was very curious about the central headquarters. People had a thirst for knowledge. The more mysterious the central headquarters was, the more they, the subordinates, wanted to find opportunities to probe and understand. This was human nature. There's such a thing? Linny thought for a moment and suddenly said, there must be a reason for the sudden stop. Could it be that you're being suspected? No way. Big Brother Doffing was shocked. He immediately shook his head and said disapprovingly, that's impossible. If the higher-ups were really suspicious of me, they would have taken action a long time ago. How could there be no movement for half a year? That's true. Linny nodded. If the Central was really an extremely strict organization, once they were suspicious, they would definitely eliminate the root of the problem quickly to prevent future trouble. It was impossible for them to not take action for half a year. It seemed that he was indeed overthinking. To be honest, boss, your sudden return this time is too surprising. I thought you were joking when you called me before. I didn't expect it to be true. Big Brother Doffing smiled. You've worked hard these few years. Linny sighed. Although he did not ask Big Brother Doffing to do anything particularly dangerous in the past few years, even if he did nothing, the sensitive identity of an undercover agent itself represented a huge risk. Not to mention, he still had to find a way to inquire about the central headquarters. Every attempt he made before was actually risky. This was a dangerous job that put his life on the line. Ordinary people might not be able to withstand such huge pressure. Boss Lenny, what are you talking about? This is what I should do. Big Brother Doffing smiled. Lenny patted him on the shoulder. In fact, this time, Big Brother Doffing directly asked him to come to this cruise ship branch. In addition to showing that he had complete control of this branch, it was not difficult for Lin Yi to guess another more important intention, to express his loyalty. Being an undercover agent was the most insecure and belonging profession in the world, just like Big Brother Doffing. For the central headquarters, he was a traitor, but for Lin Yi and the others, he might not be 100% trusted. After all, no one knew if he would secretly rebel again. As an undercover agent, the best way to show loyalty was to provide important information. However, because the central headquarters was too mysterious, Big Brother Doffing could not dig out any really valuable and important information in the past few years. Now that he was suddenly summoned by Lin Yi, it would be a lie to say that he was not flustered at all. That was why they met on the cruise ship today. This meant that Big Brother Doffing was showing everything he had in front of Lin Yi. If he wanted to rebel again in the future, these underlings of the cruise ship branch were a fatal danger. At that time, as long as one of them leaked information to Lin Yi, he would die without a burial place. Going this far was no different from showing his loyalty. Lin Yi could 100% trust his loyalty, but Big Brother Doffing had to pay a huge price for it. He was walking a tightrope. If one of the underlings of the cruise ship branch was unreliable and secretly leaked information to the central headquarters, he would also die without a burial place. Chapter 51:13. For Big Brother Doffing to be able to do what he did today, it meant that he was not a fool. He would not do things that he was not confident about, or else he would have died long ago. Although Big Brother Doffing did not say it, Lenny knew it. The two had a tacit understanding. While the two were talking, a fishing boat suddenly appeared in the distance. Unexpectedly, the fishing boat approached them. Seeing that Lenny seemed a little surprised, Big Brother Doffing smiled and explained, "Boss, don't be surprised. Fishing boats are the best cover at sea. The people who go out on missions here all rely on fishing boats. It seems that Mute and the others are back." Mute? Lenny was stunned. Yeah, a mute Chinese man. I saved him at sea half a year ago. He used to be a special forces soldier abroad. He is clean and efficient. Sometimes, he is better than Meng Gaohai and the others. Big Brother Doffing nodded. Half a year ago, Lin Yi's expression changed slightly when he heard this. The timing was too coincidental. He could not help but remind, "Aren't you afraid that he is a spy sent by the central headquarters?" "No, don't worry, boss. I'm very cautious about this matter. This Mute is just an ordinary person. It happened because of the tsunami. When I saved him, he was already dead. Later on, as a last resort, I forcefully electrocuted him back to life. If he's really an undercover agent sent by the central headquarters, he wouldn't use this method to get close to me, right? Moreover, I found someone to check his background afterward. Everything is normal," Big Brother Doffing said confidently. "It is better to be safe than sorry." Lenny nodded. At this time, a ladder had been set up between the fishing boat and the cruise ship. A dark-skinned young man with a buzz cut walked over quickly. He looked a bit like a special forces soldier. Even his walk showed a rare courage and capability. Mute walked over and nodded to Big Brother Doffing. He then handed over a file, but his eyes fell on Lin Yi with some scrutiny. Not bad, not bad. You are really good. This file can save our branch a lot of trouble. Go get your reward." Big Brother Doffing opened the file and looked through it. His face was full of praise. Yes, yes, Mute responded. He looked deeply into Lin Yi's eyes before turning around to leave. At this time, Lin Yi suddenly said, "You said he's an ordinary person?" "That's right. Although he was in the special forces, isn't he just an ordinary person compared to a cultivator?" Big Brother Feng nodded in surprise. "Then you've really made a mistake. This is a true early-stage foundation establishment expert, also known as a Heaven Dao stage expert in the secular world. Although he hid his aura very well and could easily fool you Heaven stage experts, it's not very realistic for him to hide from my senses. If I'm not wrong, You should be a spy sent by the central headquarters, right? Linny stared at Mute with an indifferent expression. What? Big Brother Phone was shocked. Mute stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at Linny warily. Finally, he said, You are Linny? Oh, you know me? Linny raised his eyebrows slightly. This guy tried everything to find out about the central headquarters just to work for you? Mute glanced at the shocked Big Brother Phone and continued to ask, That's right. Just to investigate a heaven stage perfect stage expert, you didn't hesitate to send an early stage foundation establishment expert. Moreover, you've been undercover for half a year. You're really the only one in the central headquarters to be this cautious. Linny smiled faintly. Very good. Looks like my mission can end here. Mute suddenly laughed. In the past half a year, in order to gain Big Brother Feng's trust, a dignified early-stage foundation establishment expert like him had to run errands for someone else. If it wasn't for completing the mission, he would have already turned hostile and quit. Is that so? Then can you answer a question of mine? Don't worry, it's not a confidential question from the central headquarters. It's just to satisfy my curiosity. Seeing that the other party didn't make a move, Linny asked, If I don't appear, how long will you be undercover here? A year. If there's no substantial evidence in a year, then he's innocent. Of course, there's no need for that now. As long as there's evidence, the undercover plan will automatically turn into a purge plan. Mute grinned. He was in a good mood at the moment and didn't mind answering this kind of unimportant question. Besides, everyone in this cruise ship branch, including Lin E and Big Brother Feng, was already a pile of dead people in his eyes. Of course, there was nothing to hide in front of dead people. Lin E and Big Brother Feng looked at each other and suddenly shook their heads regretfully. What a pity. What's a pity? A pity that you're going to be buried in the sea soon? Mute revealed a somewhat playful expression. He was a dignified early-stage foundation establishment expert. In this secular world, he was an invincible existence. He didn't think that anyone here could escape from his palm. It's a pity that I don't know the soul-searching technique. Otherwise, I should be able to learn a lot of useful things from you. Isn't that a pity? Linny smiled as if nothing had happened. You can't be so naive to think that you can deal with me, right? Mute was immediately amused and sneered. Although I don't know how you saw through my realm, it doesn't mean anything. In the secular world, there has never been an expert who can fight against a foundation establishment expert. There hasn't been one in the past, and there won't be one in the future. Tisk TSK, there's a limit to your ignorance. Now that the Archaic Alliance has appeared out of nowhere, there are foundation establishment experts everywhere. There are even Golden Core experts. You don't even know such a big thing. Don't you read books or read newspapers? Ignorance can kill people, Linny said with a serious face. How is this possible? Mute was shocked when he heard that. In the past 6 months, he had not done anything other than focusing on being an undercover by Big Brother Feng's side. He had not even heard of the Archaic Alliance. Everything is possible. Be more careful in your next life. As Linny said that, he suddenly slapped him. A dragon's roar sounded out of nowhere. Mute was shocked and wanted to jump off the ship to escape. Lin E was now unfathomable in his eyes. He didn't dare to act rashly before he had a clear idea of Lin Yi's strength. It didn't matter even if Lin E was stronger than him. As long as he escaped and sent the news back to the central headquarters, the experts from the headquarters would come to take care of him. He just needed to keep his life. Chapter 51:14. Plop. In the end, Mute didn't manage to escape Lin Yi's slap. The 5 elements killing aura was an absolute killer move for a foundation establishment realm master like him. After leaving a trail of blood in the air, he sank into the sea of corpses. It was easier to kill people on the high seas, and there was no need to destroy the corpses. Boss, it's over just like that? Doffing Bro couldn't help but gulp. His legs felt weak when he found out that Mute was a spy, especially when he heard that this guy was a Sky Dao stage master. He was scared out of his wits, and in the blink of an eye, he was slapped to death by Lin E. This turn of events happened too quickly, and he couldn't accept it. What else can I do? Lin E glanced at him, thinking that although his sudden appearance had exposed to Bro, he'd also gotten rid of a huge problem for him. Coming here wasn't a mistake. Otherwise, if Defeng Bro's contact with Wu Qintian was discovered by this guy in the future, and he wasn't there, that would be a real problem. That's too scary. The Central HQ actually sent out such a master just to investigate a small fry like me. They really think highly of me. Defeng Bro trembled in fear and quickly smoked a cigarette to calm himself down. You should think about it carefully. See if there are any other suspicious people under you. If there are, take care of them quickly in case you lose your life in the future, Linny reminded him. Defeng Bro frowned and thought carefully for a long time. He shook his head and said, "No, there's only Mute among the newcomers these 2 years. The others are just insignificant people. Boss, can you help me take a look again?" He was originally very confident, but after today's incident, he felt uneasy. What if there were other traitors hidden among the subordinates of the cruise branch? I saw these people on the cruise when I came up. They are all ordinary people. Even if they aren't very strong. They shouldn't be people from the Central HQ. It's not hard to understand. This time, the Central HQ sent out an early-stage Foundation Establishment Realm Master to investigate you. It's more than enough to send someone else. Your real problem is actually this Mute. Linny frowned slightly. Boss, are you saying that the Central Headquarters will still suspect me after he dies? Big Brother Phone was shocked again. That's right. We don't know how he got in contact with Central Headquarters, nor do we know what he reported before. With his death, Central Headquarters will definitely take action. However, the silver lining in the misfortune is that he is an early-stage Foundation Establishment expert. Linny suddenly laughed. What do you mean? Big Brother Phone did not understand. With his early-stage Foundation Establishment strength, you guys definitely won't be able to kill him, so the center won't put the suspicion on you guys. It just so happens that the Archaic Alliance is training in the secular world. Only the Archaic Alliance has the strength to kill him, so the center's attention will be on the Archaic Alliance. Lin Yi analyzed. I see. That's good. I really have to thank the Archaic Alliance for taking the blame for me. Big Brother Feng breathed a sigh of relief. But don't be too careless. Central Headquarters might send more people over. Try to keep a low profile from now on. Don't contact Wu Chantian and the others if there's nothing important. Wait for everything to blow over first, Linny reminded. Don't worry, boss. Our Red Conches is a big force in the country. With the current situation, if Central Headquarters really wants to do something to me, it's the same as uprooting the entire branch. Unless they find concrete evidence, they won't do anything to me. Big Brother Feng finally regained his composure and patted his chest confidently. Yes, it's still the same thing. Be careful. Remember that. Linny reminded him again. No matter what, Big Brother Feng was already one of them. He didn't want anything to happen to him. Big Brother Feng nodded repeatedly. On the other hand, Lin Yi was suspicious. Since when did Central Headquarters get an early-stage Foundation Establishment expert? It wouldn't be strange to say that this person was from the Archaic Alliance, but this was a spy sent half a year ago. With the spiritual energy in the mortal world, how could there be an early-stage Foundation Establishment expert? Boss Lin Yi, do you think I should use this opportunity to test the HQ's reaction? Defeng Bro suddenly had an idea. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. This was indeed an opportunity. However, he immediately shook his head. This Mute is a spy sent by Central Headquarters. In theory, you don't know his identity. How are you going to report to Central Headquarters? There's no point in bringing it up. Instead, it will only increase the danger for you. Once Central Headquarters becomes suspicious of you, your situation won't be good. Since Central Headquarters had the ability to send an early-stage Foundation Establishment expert to infiltrate, it would be a piece of cake to take Big Brother Feng's life as long as they made up their mind. Yes, I know it's risky, but it's a rare opportunity. Don't you think so, boss? Big Brother Feng was still excited about his brilliant idea. Well, it's indeed a rare opportunity. What are you going to say? You can't say that you accidentally discovered the Mute's identity and accidentally killed this guy, right? Linny looked at him. Of course not. Boss, didn't you just mention the Archaic Alliance? I'll just push all the blame to the Archaic Alliance. Also, it's almost time for the routine report. It shouldn't be too abrupt to mention this to them, right? Big Brother Feng smiled confidently. That's right, but since we're going to do this, we have to design the wording. Even if it's not perfect, it has to at least be undetectable. Linny pondered for a moment, and the corner of his mouth suddenly curled up. I have a good idea. Half an hour later, Doffing Bro brought Lin E to his personal office. There was nothing else other than a desk and a computer. Big Brother Phone gave Linny a look and turned on the computer. There was only one program on the desktop, Call Request. This was Big Brother Feng's only authority. He could request to report to Central Headquarters every month. Of course, the decision was not up to him. Whether he had this opportunity or not depended on the higher-ups. Chapter 51:15. 2 more days? Then maybe there's something wrong with my computer. The ship almost capsized a few days ago, and the water got in. The dates are probably wrong. Big Brother Doffing scratched his head awkwardly. Linny had already stood in the blind spot behind the computer to ensure that he wouldn't be seen by the other party. Almost capsized? How did you almost capsize? Didn't your cruise ship branch say that it's impregnable? Why can't you even deal with a natural disaster? The middle-aged man reprimanded in surprise. Sir, it's not a natural disaster this time. It's a man-made disaster. Big Brother Doffing had a bitter face for a long time before he squeezed out a sentence. There's a monster. What did you say? Although the middle-aged man's face couldn't be seen clearly, he definitely didn't look good from his voice. At this moment, the words were written on his face. Are you King kidding me? It's true. A huge worm more than 10 meters long suddenly emerged from the water to eat people. It's very powerful. Our entire cruise ship branch was almost capsized by it. I've been at sea for a long time, but I've never seen such a ferocious and terrifying thing. I've never heard of it. Big Brother Doffing's face was full of fear. Seeing that Big Brother Doffing's expression didn't seem to be fake, the middle-aged man's voice softened a little. He asked, Tell me clearly, what kind of worm is it? I've never seen it before, but I think it's called something like a blood corpse worm. Big Brother Doffing scratched his head. Blood corpse worm? The middle-aged man paused, and then his tone became suspicious. Since you've never seen it before, how do you know it's called a blood corpse worm? Because it's being controlled by someone. That person has been riding on its head from the beginning to the end. He claims to be from the Archaic Alliance, and he seems to be someone from the evil warding sect. Anyway, he looks very powerful. He even said that when this blood corpse worm really grows up, he can control the world. I think there might be something wrong with his head. Doffing Bro explained everything in detail. Linny had taught him all this, and instead of pushing the blame onto the Archaic Alliance, he might as well push the blame onto Sun Baishu. That would be perfect, and there'd be no evidence to back it up. Did you say the Primeval Alliance? The middle-aged man's tone turned solemn. It seemed like he'd heard of the Archaic Alliance before, and this wasn't out of Lin Yi's expectations. The center had such a huge power and information network in the common world, and the Archaic Alliance had caused such a huge commotion this time. It'd be weird if the headquarters hadn't heard anything about it. That's right. That person even shamelessly claimed to be a Heaven Dao stage expert, but he's just a fool. Aside from that big worm of his that's a little scary, his strength is simply a mess. Any ordinary subordinate on our side can easily kill him. To think that we were scared of him at first. Now that I think about it, it's simply too embarrassing. Big Brother Feng was very embarrassed and regretful. An ordinary subordinate killed him? The middle-aged man was shocked. Although the Central Command's headquarters wasn't here, and the Red Conch was the only real large-scale branch force in the country, it was obviously not strong enough. Therefore, it was difficult to obtain first-hand information in time. However, some basic information was still known. The disciples of the Archaic Alliance who came out to the secular world were indeed Heaven Dao stage experts. If Big Brother Doffing wasn't lying, then the person who dealt with the Archaic Alliance's Heaven Dao stage expert wouldn't be an ordinary subordinate. It must be an expert of the corresponding level. He had already vaguely guessed who it was. Yes, it's a mute that I personally rescued half a year ago. Although he used to be a Special Forces soldier overseas, he's just an ordinary person. This kid is loyal and brave. At that time, we were so scared that we didn't dare to move, but he rushed up and fought with that guy without saying anything. The two of them and that big worm fought for a while in the sea, but in the end, no one floated up. We're probably all dead. It's a pity that it's not easy to find such a loyal subordinate. Big Brother Doffing sighed with regret. No one floated up? How could this be? Didn't you send someone to salvage them? The middle-aged man's voice suddenly became anxious. Boss, we made a lot of noise at the time. In order to escape, we fled from the high seas to the coast. After they sank, even the Coast Guard ship came over. We could only leave quickly, or we would be wiped out, Big Brother Fong said with a bitter face. Boss, we made a lot of noise at the time. The middle-aged man couldn't help but fall silent. Sir, I sent someone to sneak back the second day after the incident. There was nothing left. It must have been swept away by the tide. Big Brother Doffing said carefully. You. The middle-aged man was obviously a little hesitant. However, from Big Brother Doffing's point of view, there was nothing wrong with the way the matter was handled. Even as a superior, he couldn't casually ask questions for no reason. After all, Big Brother Doffing was the leader of Red Conk's branch in the country. For the Central Command, even if he wasn't a real feudal official, he was still a big figure. The middle-aged man was silent for a moment and suddenly said, Wait a moment. I'll give you instructions later. Yes. Big Brother Doffing nodded, and then saw the other party cut off the communication. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. Linny, who was standing in the opposite corner, looked at each other and smiled. Although he had rehearsed his words many times, when he actually said it, it still made him break out in a cold sweat. He was afraid that he would accidentally reveal some flaws. Fortunately, from the reaction of this person, he most likely believed it. Linny also breathed a sigh of relief. Now that the bait was successfully cast, whether or not they could successfully catch a big fish depended on the other party's next actions and reactions. Everything was done, and the rest was up to fate. In the headquarters of the common world, after the middle-aged man cut off the communication with Big Brother Doffing, he quickly walked to a secret research room. At this time, a woman was currently observing the human experiment in the isolation room. If Wang Xinyan was here, she would definitely be shocked, because this woman was her roommate, Lan Shiru. Professor Lan, it's bad. The middle-aged man rushed in with a panicked expression. What are you panicking for, Professor Glasses? You're an old man here. You're not allowed to barge into the laboratory during the experiment. Have you forgotten this basic rule? Lan Shiru glared at the middle-aged man with dissatisfaction. Yes, I forgot myself. The professor couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Tell me, what's making you so panicked? Lan Shiru asked. The professor took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, Something happened to number 1? Chapter 51:16. The number 1 they were talking about was Mute, who was working undercover beside Doffing. With number 1's early-stage foundation establishment realm strength, there should be no danger in doing such a small thing. That was why they sent him out with ease. Who would have thought that an early-stage foundation establishment realm expert would get into trouble? Was there really something wrong with Doffing? Lan Xiaoru was shocked. She had this suspicion since half a year ago. Although Big Brother Feng did not mention it openly, it was too obvious that he was trying all kinds of ways to inquire about the central headquarters. It was not strange for the branch members to have this kind of curiosity, but it was rare to see someone as proactive as him. With Lan Xiaoru's cautious and suspicious personality, she naturally had to do a thorough investigation. However, even if Doffing could control the entire Red Conch branch, it was impossible for him to deal with number 1 with his manpower and strength. After all, he was an early-stage foundation establishment realm expert. Even if he was outnumbered, he should at least be able to escape, right? According to Doffing's report, it said that it was done by a Heavenly Dao realm expert from the Archaic Alliance. That person even tamed a huge blood corpse bug. Number 1 fought with him in the sea, and after that, there was no trace of him. They probably died together. The Glasses doctor sighed. Archaic Alliance? How did they offend the Archaic Alliance? Lan Xiaoru frowned. In fact, ever since she found out that the Archaic Alliance had appeared, she had been sending people to investigate the Archaic Alliance. Although she hadn't made any direct contact, she still knew a lot of things through various channels. She couldn't help but ask doubtfully, Why did I hear that the people from the Archaic Alliance have been summoned back? I didn't ask in detail. I only heard that person seemed to be from the evil warding sect. He should be one of the few cultivators that the Archaic Alliance left outside. The doctor in glasses speculated. Maybe. Lan Shiru's expression was unfathomable. After a moment of silence, she snorted. Damn it. In the first batch of 10, only one succeeded. Now the second batch has encountered a bottleneck because they couldn't find a suitable test subject. I didn't expect that the only surviving number one would get into trouble. How do you want me to explain this to the higher-ups? Dr. Lan, I have an idea. The doctor in glasses suddenly smiled. What idea? Lan Xiaoru looked at him and asked. With the conditions in the secular world, finding a suitable experimental subject is like looking for a needle in a haystack. This is the key reason why we've encountered a bottleneck. But don't we have a ready-made target now? The bespectacled doctor smiled sinisterly. You mean the Archaic Alliance? Lan Xiaoru frowned. That's right, Professor Lan. Think about it carefully. Our mission is to mass-produce Foundation establishment experts, and it would be best if we could achieve that in the secular world. But since we've reached a bottleneck, there's no harm in changing our thinking. If we can find a way to get a Foundation establishment expert from the Archaic Alliance, it'll be much easier to control him than to make one ourselves, right? The bespectacled doctor adjusted his trademark black-rimmed glasses. Go on, Lan Shiru said calmly. As long as we can control the first one, it'll be much easier to get the second and third. That way, it won't be long before we can control a large number of Foundation establishment experts. This way, not only will we be able to fulfill the requirements of the higher-ups, but we might even be able to go one step further and start mass production of Golden Core experts. After all, those people are from the Archaic Alliance, and their qualities will definitely be much better than the cultivators in the secular world. With them as the experimental subjects, the success rate will definitely be much higher. The more the bespectacled doctor spoke, the more excited he became. In his opinion, this was a genius idea. That's not a bad idea. Lan Shiru couldn't help but feel a little tempted when she heard this. She was very clear that mass-producing Foundation establishment experts was only the first step. The next step was to continue mass-producing Golden Core experts. With the conditions of the secular world's experimental samples, even Foundation establishment experts would be hard to satisfy, let alone Golden Core experts. For their experiments, the quality of the samples was the most crucial factor in determining success or failure. The same experiment method could easily succeed on Heavenly Island, but it wouldn't work in the secular world. No matter how much they improved it, the success rate would never increase. In the end, it was because the quality of the samples was too poor. They couldn't compare to Heavenly Island at all. But now, the Archaic Alliance suddenly appeared. Even if their strength couldn't compare to Heavenly Island, it was much, much higher than the secular world. This was practically a ready-made human body material delivered to their doorstep. Professor Lan, the second batch of human experiments has been at a stalemate for half a year now, and there hasn't been any substantial progress. Even if the higher-ups don't say anything, they will definitely be dissatisfied in private. We need to produce results urgently. The bespectacled doctor urged. But this matter with the Archaic Alliance is no small matter. If the news gets out, it will be a huge threat to our headquarters. This matter must be reported to the higher-ups and discussed. We can't act rashly. Lan Xiaoru finally managed to maintain her rationality. This kind of thing would cause a huge mess if she were to act rashly. Yes. This matter is of great importance. Chapter 51:17. Got it, boss. I value my life, so I definitely won't do anything stupid. Boss Linny, just wait for my good news. Big Brother Doffing patted his chest. He could not help but worry when he saw Big Brother Doffing's careless look. However, Big Brother Doffing was a meticulous person, and he had a lot of social experience. He should have no problem protecting himself if he was careful. Linny did not need to worry. While the central headquarters private plane had not arrived, Linny explained some things about the Archaic Alliance to Big Brother Doffing. It was foreseeable that the people at the central headquarters would definitely ask about these things. If Big Brother Doffing acted like he did not know anything, It meant that he had lost his value. At that time, not only would it be difficult to investigate deeper core secrets, but his own safety would also become difficult to guarantee. After all, worthless trash had no human rights to speak of. Of course, Lenny couldn't tell him too much, or it'd look unnatural if he accidentally spilled the beans. What he could and couldn't know was up to him. Only he could help Doffing Bro check on these things. Everything was ready. 2 hours later, a helicopter appeared above the cruise ship. Big Brother Doffing and Lin E, who was hiding in the dark, looked at each other, took a deep breath, and climbed the rope ladder. The helicopter did not stop for long and soon became a small black dot. A helicopter? Is the central headquarters not far from this place? Lin E could not help but be a little surprised, but he immediately overturned his thoughts. Although the helicopter's flight radius was very limited, no one said that this helicopter would take Big Brother Doffing to the central headquarters. Maybe it was just the first stop. It turned out that Lin Yi's speculation was right. The helicopter was indeed just the first stop. After Big Brother Doffing was dropped directly into an open space in the deep forest, a small transport plane soon appeared above his head. It was a military transport plane with vertical takeoff and landing capabilities. This equipment really shocked Big Brother Doffing. However, on second thought, the central headquarters was so unpredictable, this level was just a piece of cake. After the transport plane landed, the hatch opened automatically. It was a completely enclosed room. Although there were some entertainment facilities such as televisions, there was not even a window to look outside. Brother Doffing deliberately waited outside for a long time. He wanted to get close to the pilot. If he was lucky, he might be able to get some useful information in advance, such as the specific location of the central headquarters. In the end, the pilot didn't arrive. Instead, an electronic voice kept urging him to board the plane. Brother Doffing was stunned for a moment before sneaking around to the high slope in front of him to take a look. Only then did he realize that this was a freaking unmanned vehicle. No wonder no one had come down to greet him for a long time. Brother Doffing had no choice but to board the plane. Sure enough, as soon as he walked into the room, his phone's signal instantly turned to zero. Even the satellite navigation was useless. He originally wanted to use this method to record the route and the central headquarters location, but it seemed like he was overthinking it. After flying for half a day, Big Brother Doffing fell asleep. When he woke up, the plane had already landed. When Big Brother Doffing walked out of the hatch and took a look, he was stunned again. His phone still had no signal, and the satellite navigation was still useless. There was no topography in front of him that could help him determine his location because this was an underground airport. "You are Doffing, right? Come with me. Dr. Glasses is waiting for you." A man in a white assistant uniform came over and said, "Oh, okay." Brother Doffing quickly followed. Although he didn't know who Dr. Glasses was, he could basically guess. It was most likely his superior. He followed the man through the airport and entered the elevator. A moment later, the elevator door opened. Brother Doffing looked at the busy scene in front of him and rubbed his eyes. He asked subconsciously, "This is the central headquarters?" "That's right. This is the central headquarters." The man nodded. Over the past few years, Big Brother Doffing had fantasized about what the data center's headquarters would look like countless times. In his mind, for such an unfathomable organization like the data center, the headquarters must be a place where all the heroes gathered, and anyone who passed by must be a notorious fiend. However, the scene in front of him was completely different. It was a huge hall. All kinds of people came and went, men and women, old and young. The only thing they had in common was that almost all of them were wearing white lab coats. All of them seemed very busy. Even when they were walking, they were talking to each other. It sounded very academic and profound. Above each exit around the hall, the name of the area was marked. Human, biochemistry, intelligence, weapons. Obviously, these were the research directions of each area. Brother Doffing couldn't help but swallow his saliva. This was not the central headquarters he imagined. It was simply a cutting-edge scientific research base. "Let's go. Dr. Glass's patience is limited." The man urged in front. Oh, are we all researchers here?" Brother Doffing casually probed. "This floor is in charge of scientific research. I don't know what other departments or people there are, but they must be on other floors." Unless there are special circumstances, you can't go to other floors at will. Of course, you can't just walk around the various experimental areas on this floor. I think Dr. Glasses will give you a pass later. You can go and you can go. Swipe the pass and you will know, the man explained. Okay. Brother Doffing couldn't help but be a little disappointed. It seemed that even if he came to the central headquarters, it would not be easy to find out valuable core information. The man brought Brother Doffing to the door of a research room. After swiping the pass and entering, Brother Doffing saw a middle-aged man wearing huge black-rimmed glasses. He was dark and thin, but his eyes were extremely sinister and sharp. Okay, go do what you need to do. Sample number 7's condition is a little unstable. Go and give him a bottle of tranquilizer. The bespectacled doctor instructed, and then turned to Brother Doffing. Doffing, this is your first time coming to the central headquarters. What do you think? Hearing this familiar hoarse voice, Brother Doffing was sure that the other party was indeed his superior. He quickly said respectfully, reporting to the superior, "It feels different from what I expected. It looks like a scientific research base." "Yes, this is a scientific research base. Do you know why I transferred you here?" The bespectacled doctor smiled. I don't know." Brother Doffing shook his head. Chapter 51:18. Really? Thank you for the promotion. This subordinate will definitely go through fire and water and will not hesitate to die. Big Brother Fong had seen this kind of scene many times before, and his grateful expression was very good. Haha, it's not that serious. Just do your job well. The doctor smiled with satisfaction and said, "All right, let's get down to business. Tell me everything you know about the Archaic Alliance, especially the encounter with the expert from the evil warding sect. Don't miss anything, understand?" Yes, yes. Big Brother Fong quickly nodded. According to what Linny had told him before, Doffing quietly revealed some things about the Archaic Alliance. The glasses doctor's eyes lit up after listening to it. He secretly thought that Miss Lawn really had foresight. Although what Doffing said was not difficult to find out and was not as comprehensive as the central headquarters, there were some details that had never been noticed and were very valuable. "Sir, that's all I know." Big Brother Feng's expression was very honest. "Good, very good. The things you said are very useful. Stay here and be my assistant," the doctor said with satisfaction. "Assistant? Oh, then what should I do next?" Big Brother Doffing quickly asked. Aside from the specific location of the central headquarters, what he wanted to figure out the most at the moment was the so-called Primordial Research Group. However, he had just arrived here, so he couldn't just ask about these things. Haste makes waste, so he had to take things step by step. There's no rush. Familiarize yourself here for 2 days. I will tell you if there are any missions. This is your pass. Your room number is written on it. Go and rest for a while. Remember not to wander around. You only have the basic access right now. Other than my room and the public living area, you can't go anywhere else, the doctor said. Understood. Big Brother Fong saluted with a serious expression. Haha, don't be so serious. This is a research base, not a combat base. Just be natural. The doctor smiled and turned to leave. It seemed that he had obtained a lot of valuable information from Big Brother Fong. He was in a good mood. The doctor was in a good mood. However, Big Brother Fong was not in a good mood. Although everything had gone smoothly so far, at least he had not revealed any flaws. Judging from the other party's attitude, he had already gained the initial trust and knew that he was about to join the Primordial Research Group. Everything looked perfect, but the problem was that they didn't get any substantial information at all. What was even more troublesome was that even if he managed to find out the key information, there was no way for him to pass it to Lin Yi. All signals in this place were blocked, and no one was allowed to walk around. What could he do? Damn, I can only take it one step at a time, Brother Doffing muttered. He took the pass and began to wander around. However, he had to familiarize himself with the places that he could go first. As for the places that he couldn't enter, he would think of a way later. What Doffing Bro didn't know was that from the moment he entered the HQ, his every move was under surveillance. Fortunately, he listened to Lin Yi's advice and acted cautiously, or else he would have been caught a long time ago. On the other side, The doctor ran to Lan Xiaoru excitedly to report the situation. However, as soon as he entered the door, he saw Lan Xiaoru fuming. The reason was simple. The second batch of experimental samples was wiped out again. Dr. Lan, it has been proven that this path is not working. It's time for us to change our way of thinking, the doctor advised. Lan Xiaoru was silent for a moment. After she suppressed all her anger, she slowly said, I have already reported to the higher-ups. The higher-ups mean that this is not a trivial matter, and we must be careful. Does that mean we are not allowed to do it? The doctor was a little disappointed. The center never kept idle people. If they wanted to truly gain a foothold in the central headquarters, or even move up a level, they must have results that could be taken care of. However, there was no future in this situation. It's not that we can't do it. We just have to be careful. If anything goes wrong, you and I will have to take full responsibility, Lan Xiaoru said lightly. What do you mean, Dr. Lan? The doctor looked at her. I was still hesitating, but there is no other choice now that things have come to this. Lan Xiaoru looked at the annihilated second batch of experimental bodies and sighed. Although the overall strength of the secular world couldn't compare to that of Heaven Stage Island, it was still an important part of the organization. If the secular world didn't make any progress, it would drag down the expansion of the entire organization. At this point, they had no choice but to take the risk. Dr. Lan, rest assured. I just obtained a lot of valuable information from Dafeng. As long as we plan carefully, there won't be any problems, the doctor quickly said. Lan Xiaoru nodded and said, Okay, go and gather all the top 10 doctors here. I want them in every field. I want to form an archaic research group. What about Dafeng? The doctor asked. Lan Xiaoru thought for a moment and said, Give him a peripheral position first. He has some understanding of the Archaic Alliance and is also the leader of the Red Conch branch. He should be of some use. Okay. The doctor nodded repeatedly. 10 minutes later, everyone was gathered in the first conference room. Even Dafeng, who had just arrived, was called over as a peripheral researcher. However, he was sitting at the very edge. Looking at Lan Xiaoru and the other core members of the central headquarters, Dafeng couldn't help feeling excited. Just taking pictures of these people was a rare and important piece of information. Unfortunately, he didn't dare to do so. Even a fool knew that there would be all kinds of surveillance cameras here. If he made the slightest movement, he would be courting death. Not to mention, even if he took pictures, he wouldn't be able to send them out. But in any case, it was already a delightful harvest for Dafeng to be able to enter this conference room. As long as he patiently lurked here, it was only a matter of time before he obtained the key information. Everyone, the Archean Research Group is officially established from today onwards. This is a crucial project that concerns the future of our central headquarters. The success or failure of this project rests on everyone's shoulders. I hope everyone will do their best. Lan Xiaoru made the introductory remarks. Dr. Lan, what is the main topic of the Archaic Research Group? Someone raised his hand and asked. It's very simple. Capture the cultivators of the Archaic Alliance and use biotechnology to brainwash them. We will use them for our own purposes. Lan Xiaoru bluntly said. Chapter 51:19. He had already learned a lot about the Archaic Alliance from Lin A, so he naturally knew what kind of existence the Archaic Alliance was. He didn't expect that the central headquarters would actually target these people. Their courage was simply out of this world. What kind of existence is the Archaic Alliance? These professors had always been focused on their own research, so only a few of them had a specific concept of the so-called Archaic Alliance. The summary of the information about the Archaic Alliance has been sent to your computers. You will know the details once you take a look. Lan Xiaoru pointed to the laptops in front of everyone. In fact, many people were already looking at it long before she said this. However, not all of them had this kind of treatment. At least, the peripheral researchers sitting at the edge didn't have this kind of treatment. Seeing this, Big Brother Feng couldn't help but feel pity. Otherwise, he could find out how much these people knew about the Archaic Alliance. This way, he would have more confidence in his words and actions in the future. At least the foundation establishment stage. Since the Archaic Alliance's cultivators are so strong, with our strength here, I'm afraid we won't be able to deal with them, right? Someone immediately questioned. Yes, and they are all gathered together now. There is no chance of making a move. Others also shook their heads. Everyone, even if they are foundation establishment stage experts, as long as we plan carefully, it is not impossible to pick the weakest among them. As for them being gathered together, it is not a bad thing for our plan. On the contrary, it is a great thing for us. Lan Xiaoru smiled slightly. What do you mean? Everyone was puzzled. It's very simple. Although most of them are gathered together, not all of them have been summoned back. There are still some people who are active in the secular world. These people are basically acting alone, so they are the best candidates for us to target. On the contrary, if all of them were moving normally, then we would have to consider it carefully, because that means that it is very likely that they will help each other. And right now, there are not many people moving around outside, and they are scattered all over the place. As long as we target them, we won't be able to call for help even if we call for help. Lan Xiaoru said confidently. Professor Lan, may I ask how we can deal with the Foundation Establishment Stage experts of the Archaic Alliance? I heard that the first test subject that succeeded the first time has been killed. Can the Heavenly Island send reinforcements? Someone immediately asked. That is impossible. The teleportation channel that connects here to the Heavenly Island can only send dead objects. The success rate of sending living people is very low. It is not reliable to pin our hopes on such a small probability. Someone immediately shook his head and objected. Everyone was talking, and Big Brother Feng, who was sitting on the edge, was dumbfounded. Although the central headquarters definitely had the means to travel between Heaven Island and the secular world, which had been confirmed by the previous letter, he was still shocked when he heard it with his own ears. The strength of the central headquarters was really amazing. We don of the Heavenly Island's reinforcements. We have the ability ourselves. Lan Xiaoru paused and slowly swept her gaze around the room. She spat out 3 words, Hunter Team. As soon as he said that, everyone fell silent. Brother Dafeng did not understand what he meant, but the core doctors of the central headquarters knew the weight of these 3 words very well. This was because every one of them would immediately equip this mysterious team with their latest research results. This was a card that the central headquarters rarely played, a trump card. Hongshui City was a small but bustling coastal city. In every aspect, Hongshui City was on a completely different level from the other cities, but it was extremely famous for one thing. This was also the source of its prosperity, the prostitutes on the outskirts. This was the concentration camp of the prostitutes in the country, and also a paradise for the upper class. Finding prostitutes was the practice of country bumpkins. After reaching a certain level, if you really wanted to find a woman, you would definitely look for a prostitute. Be it their appearance or temperament, they were not something an ordinary prostitute could compare to. Of course, the price was naturally not something an ordinary prostitute could compare to. The Shuiheng Building, as a landmark of Shuiheng City, was a paradise of paradise. Those who entered and exited this place were either rich or noble. Only the top prostitutes were qualified to accompany them. Ordinary people could not even enter the door. However, on this day, the top floor of the Shuiheng Building was booked by a super-rich second-generation heir. He only had one guest, a man in red who looked to be in his 20s or 30s. Young Master, you haven't been here for a long time. Why are you suddenly in the mood today? Why didn't you call earlier? We could have dressed up a little. A few prostitutes in extremely simple clothes pushed the door open and laughed. Each and every one of them was charming, pure, sexy, and cute. They were all top-notch beauties that were rarely seen in the outside world. Why are you guys so slow? You made us wait for a few minutes. Hurry up and apologize to Big Brother Jing. Young Master Yu waved his hand and at the same time turned to the man in red and said, Big Brother Jing, what do you think of them? The man in red looked at the prostitutes lecherously. He nodded and shook his head. Not bad, but they're still lacking a little. Lacking a little? Young Master Yu was stunned for a moment. He looked at the scene of the man in red taking advantage of the prostitutes and immediately understood. I understand. I'll call a few more over. The prostitutes were all perceptive people. Seeing that young Master Yu was so respectful to the man in red, They knew that he must have a great background. They immediately became even more attentive and asked in a coquettish voice, "Big Brother Jing, where are you from?" Thousand Blades Sect. The red-clothed man grinned as he embraced the women and molested them without restraint. He looked like a hungry lecher. The Thousand Blades Sect? What kind of place is that? I've never heard of it. Big Brother Jing, you didn't just randomly make up a place to fool us, did you? The prostitutes laughed and flattered him, but they were also confused. The man in red laughed. He really wasn't making this up. His name was Jing Taiyang, and he was an expert from the Immemorial Alliance's Thousand Blades Sect. The Thousand Blades Sect had always been strict. He didn't have the chance to get close to women in the Immemorial Alliance. Now that he had finally come to the secular world, he naturally wanted to enjoy himself. Each of them was a heaven stage great perfection expert, and without saying a word, they surrounded Jing Taiyang. As for young Master Yu and the other women, they didn't even have time to scream before they were instantly silenced. This scene happened so suddenly that Jing Taiyang was completely unprepared. As an early-stage foundation establishment expert from the Archaic Alliance, he should have been an invincible existence in the secular world. Who would have thought that he would become someone else's prey? Including Hong Yang, there were a total of 5 heaven-stage great perfection experts surrounding him. Normally, Jing Taiyang would definitely scoff at this. Although there was only one level difference between the early-stage foundation establishment and the heaven-stage great perfection experts, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. In particular, Jing Taiyang was a core disciple of the Thousand Blades Sect, and his strength was outstanding among the experts of the same level. Not to mention 1 against 5, 1 against 10 was a piece of cake. However, his current situation was really not optimistic. He was blinded by lust and was poisoned by Hong Yang's biochemical medicine. The qi in his body became stagnant. At this moment, it was difficult for him to even stand. So how much strength could he have? Who the hell are you? Jing Taiyang once again opened his mouth with difficulty. You really don't want to give up. At this time, you still want to talk nonsense to buy time, and still want to escape from under our hands? Hong Yang simply ignored his question and directly signaled everyone to attack together. Although the plan was already in the bag at this step, Jing Taiyang was an early-stage foundation establishment expert after all. No one knew what other powerful and fatal trump cards he was hiding, so they must not relax until the last moment. As the trump card group that the headquarters of the secular world valued most, every member of the hunter group was the super elite of the super elite. The strength of the heaven stage great perfection was only the minimum threshold, and the other aspects must be the most top-notch existence. The most important reference condition was the temperament. It was simply a fool's dream to expect them to underestimate the enemy and make a big mistake. Seeing these people directly attack without hesitation, Jing Taiyang's heart suddenly sank. As Hong Yang said, he really thought so. He didn't know what the biochemical medicine was, but he could roughly guess that it must be some kind of poison, and it should not be directly fatal, but it could only block the circulation of the qi in the body. Of course, for an early-stage foundation establishment expert like him, this poison was actually no different from a fatal one. With his qi blocked, he could not exert his strength at all, and in front of the opponent, he was a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. However, he did not intend to be captured so easily. His strategy of stalling time was seen through by the opponent. Jing Taiyang clenched his teeth and suddenly raised his hand to wave at the nearest Hong Yang. Out of nowhere, a soft sword of neither long nor short appeared in his hand. In this situation, he could not mobilize much qi, but this sword was still enough to turn the situation around. Every disciple of the Thousand Blades sect was a weapon master, and the sword was the leader of all weapons. Even if Jing Taiyang's sword art was not at the master level, it was definitely at a higher level. The most important thing was that this sword came very suddenly. The biochemical medicine was the main culprit of his current desperate situation, but at this moment, it also became the best cover for him. No matter how good the psychological quality of the central hunter group was, when faced with a target that was hit, they would subconsciously relax a little. This was a human's instinct. Good sword art, but unfortunately, it is not fast enough. At the last moment, Hong Yang grabbed the blade with one hand. It looked like she was wearing an ordinary glove, but it was one of the latest products of the central headquarters, and it was enough to deal with any cold weapon attack. Jing Taiyang's face darkened. If the qi in his body could circulate normally, Hong Yang would have been a dead person at this time. Unfortunately, there was no if in this world. Without the support of the most important qi, his sword art was useless. No matter how good it was, whether it was speed or power, it was far from enough. After all, the opponent was an expert at the heaven stage great perfection, not an ordinary person. Chapter 51:21. However, at this moment, a silver needle that was hard to see with the naked eye suddenly silently pierced Hong Yang's neck from behind. It was glowing with a faint green light, clearly carrying a highly toxic poison. Looking at Hong Yang's oblivious expression, Jing Taiyang was overjoyed. Success. The symbol of the Thousand Blade sect had never been a single weapon, but the legendary Thousand Blades shooting at the same time. Even for an early-stage Foundation establishment expert like Jing Taiyang, it was common for him to control 7 or 8 blades at the same time in battle. Now that his true qi was obstructed, the 8 blades shooting at the same time, which he was most adept at, was no longer possible. However, relying on the meager amount of true qi that he could barely mobilize, it was enough for him to control a tiny poisonous needle. Go to hell. Seeing that he was about to succeed, Jing Taiyang's mouth couldn't help but curl up. No matter what, it was an unforgivable shame for an early-stage Foundation establishment expert like him to fall into the hands of a secular world organization. Instead of waiting to be captured, it was better for him to die. Moreover, it wasn't impossible for him to escape. As long as he could successfully kill Hong Yang, Jing Taiyang would be able to deter the other 4 people. At the very least, he would be able to create chaos, and perhaps he would have a chance to escape. Ding! A crisp sound of metal colliding caused Jing Taiyang's heart to sink to the bottom. Whether it was Hong Yang or the other 4 people, none of them were aware of his small action. The poison needle had indeed successfully hit Hong Yang's neck, but unfortunately, it didn't penetrate her skin. How is this possible? Jing Taiyang couldn't help but be stunned. He simply couldn't imagine why Hong Yang's skin was made of metal. One of the latest research results of the central headquarters was tempered skin. As a member of the Ancient Alliance, he would never be able to understand it. Hong Yang didn't answer. She turned sideways and directly kneed him. Feeling the sharp pain coming from his abdomen, Jing Taiyang instantly curled up like a shrimp and flew out. Opportunity. Jing Taiyang endured the pain and his eyes lit up. Even in this situation, he didn't give up the idea of escaping. Borrowing the momentum from Hong Yang's kick, he suddenly rushed out of the floor-to-ceiling window. Jumping from the 24th floor of the Shuihang building was tantamount to courting death, but he was an early-stage Foundation establishment expert from the Ancient Alliance. How could he die so easily? However, it turned out that Jing Taiyang was thinking too much. The moment he rushed out of the French window, the 4 black-clothed men moved at the same time. A giant net then firmly covered him, and then tightened. When he was pulled out again, his whole body had been squeezed into a ball, completely unable to move. Hong Yang looked at this scene expressionlessly. She spoke into the communication device implanted in her head. The target has been captured successfully. Hunter Group, return to the team. One day later, Hong Yang and the other 4 returned to the central headquarters. Jing Taiyang was sent to the laboratory as soon as he got off the plane. A group of mad scientists had already been waiting for him, their prey. This was the first sample of the ancient research group since its establishment. As a peripheral researcher, Brother Dafeng was not qualified to enter the core laboratory, but he could see from afar. Looking at the unconscious Jing Taiyang, he couldn't help but be shocked. Even an early-stage Foundation establishment expert was captured. The central headquarters was really cruel. He was very anxious now. Ever since he learned about the purpose of the Ancient Research Group, he knew that it was absolutely a great event for both the Ancient Alliance and the secular world. Judging from the way the central headquarters operated, the possibility of success was extremely high. Once a large number of Ancient Alliance experts were controlled, not only would it have a huge impact on the Ancient Alliance, but it would also inevitably affect the secular world. More specifically, it would inevitably involve Lin Yi. Therefore, no matter what, He had to pass this information to Lin Yi as soon as possible. But the problem was that he was now trapped in the central headquarters and couldn't move around, let alone communicate with the outside world. How could he pass the information? As the most important and core plan of the central headquarters in the secular world, the moment Jing Taiyang was transported back, the entire central headquarters was completely busy. Lan Xiaoru personally led the glasses doctor and the others into action. This was the first step of the ancient plan, and there was no room for error. At the same time, the hunter group led by Hong Yang was not idle. They were analyzing the information and looking for the next target. If they could find a second single early-stage foundation establishment expert like Jing Taiyang, as long as the plan was as thorough as this time, the possibility of them failing was very small. Of course, if the other party's strength was stronger than the early-stage foundation establishment, then they would have to wait until they completely controlled Jing Taiyang before acting together. With their strength at the peak of heaven stage, capturing an early-stage foundation establishment expert was already their limit. It was very difficult to have any confidence in capturing someone stronger than this. 2 days later, the hunter group locked onto the target and attacked again. The target was the early-stage foundation establishment, and they succeeded. 3 days later, the hunter group attacked again, but this time they brought Jing Taiyang, who had been completely brainwashed by the central headquarters. The target was the early-stage foundation establishment, and they succeeded. Another 3 days later, the hunter group, together with Jing Taiyang and 2 other successfully brainwashed early-stage foundation establishment experts, attacked again. The target was the peak early-stage foundation establishment, and they succeeded. In less than 10 days, 4 experts of the Archaic Alliance had fallen into the hands of the central headquarters. One was at the peak of the early-stage foundation establishment realm, and the other 3 were at the early-stage foundation establishment realm. Such an astonishing efficiency left Brother Dafeng dumbfounded. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before the Archaic Alliance experts scattered in the secular world were like turtles in a jar. Not only that, but what shocked Brother Dafeng even more was that after these foundation establishment experts fell into the control of the central headquarters, they could actually increase their strength rapidly in just a few days. He still didn't know that this technology was already very mature for the central headquarters. The secular world was just using the basic technology of Heaven Stage Island. From the beginning, what limited the strength of the central headquarters in the secular world was not the technology, but the experimental samples. As long as the experimental samples had a strong enough foundation and potential, with their technology and resources, they could create a large number of foundation establishment experts in a very short period of time. Now that the ancient plan had been launched, and after obtaining these foundation establishment experts from the Ancient Alliance, it was only natural for them to increase their strength. After witnessing this series of terrifying developments, Big Brother Dafeng was now horrified. If this continued, the Archaic Alliance and the secular world would not just suffer a blow. Even as a peripheral researcher who occasionally helped out, Big Brother Dafeng could more or less sense the ambition of the central headquarters. That woman, Lan Xiaoru, was definitely after something big. The more he sensed all this, the more anxious Brother Dafeng became. However, no matter how anxious he was, it was useless. He had no chance to send a message. In fact, Brother Dafeng was not the only one who was anxious. Lin Yi was also very anxious. He was at a loss about everything that had happened recently. After all, the Ancient Alliance experts scattered all over the secular world were extremely secretive. Not only could the Ancient Alliance not contact them, but even the Supernatural Investigation Bureau could not find any traces of them. The Central Hunter Group had always been meticulous, so he naturally did not notice them. Lin Yi was most worried that Brother Dafeng would reveal a flaw in the central headquarters. In order to be able to receive him at any time, he specially stayed nearby. In the end, after half a month, there was still no news of Brother Dafeng. Did something happen to him? In the transfer station of the Primordial Passage, there was a flash of light, and a young man dressed in white suddenly appeared in the transmission array. His eyes were cold and without the slightest hint of emotion, giving off the feeling that he was an emotionless ice man, causing people to feel fear at first sight. Chapter 51:22. Her name was Bing Wuqing. In terms of age, She was not much older than Xue Jianfeng. In fact, she was even a few years younger. However, her strength was there for all to see. Even Xue Jianfeng could only pinch his nose and call her Uncle Master. The so-called number 1 Foundation establishment cultivator of the Archaic Alliance was nothing in front of Bing Wuqing, because that title was left over from her playing. 2 generations of the number 1 Foundation establishment cultivators had come from the Snow Sword faction. From this point alone, the Snow Sword faction's foundation was indeed extraordinary. In the entire Archaic Alliance, it was a top-notch existence among the 10 small sects and clans. If they had 1 or 2 more nascent soul cultivators, it would not be impossible for them to challenge the 4 major sects and clans. However, this was not a good thing for Xue Jianfeng. He had always considered himself the successor of the Snow Sword faction. With such an Uncle Master above him, no matter who it was, they would not be in a good mood. If it was possible, Xue Jianfeng would definitely not let the higher-ups send such an Uncle Master. It was a pity that his father was only the deputy head of the Snow Sword faction. Although his status and power in the Snow Sword faction were not low, it was far from the point where he could cover the sky with one hand. Moreover, Cold's master was not an ordinary person. He would definitely try to argue for what was right. In the end, the Snow Sword faction sent Bing Wuqing, who was more neutral, to balance the situation. Bing Wuqing looked at Xue Jianfeng expressionlessly and said in a cold voice, "From today onwards, all the disciples of the Snow Sword faction who are training are under my command. You are no longer the leader." "Yes, I understand." Xue Jianfeng nodded hurriedly. He did not dare to be presumptuous in front of Bing Wuqing. Moreover, this was his suggestion from the beginning. Ever since he fought with Lin Yi, he knew that he had no hope of revenge with his own strength. Therefore, he could only think of a way to ask for help from the Snow Sword faction. Of course, this wasn't something they could ask for help just because they wanted to. If there wasn't a good reason, then they wouldn't be able to get past the Archaic Alliance. The reason Xue Jianfeng gave was that his Dantian had been crippled, and there was no one among the disciples of the Snow Sword School who could take his place as the eldest senior disciple. Without a leader, it would be easy for something to happen. So, he asked the Snow Sword School to get rid of another senior disciple. The reason sounded reasonable, so the Archaic Alliance did not stop it and allowed the Snow Sword faction to send out Bing Wuqing, the Uncle Master leading the team again. There was only one condition, and that was that Bing Wuqing could only lead the disciples of her own Snow Sword faction. She was not allowed to order the disciples of other archaic sects around, and she was not allowed to fight for power with Xionigia. After all, Xionigia was the recognized rightful Uncle Master leading the team in the secular world. "Where's Lung Lung? Call her over," Bing Wuqing said directly. Other than leading the disciples of the Snow Sword faction for the training, she had another important mission, which was to send Lung Lung back to the archaic underworld. The sect's life was greater than the sky. Ever since they found out that Lung Lung had disobeyed the order, the senior disciples of the Snow Sword faction had been quarreling like a pot of porridge. The 2 factions had a small quarrel every day, and a big quarrel every 3 days. Vice leader Xue swore to punish Lung Lung to avenge her son, while Lung Lung's master argued with reason every time. But no matter what the final outcome was, there was one thing that couldn't be discussed, and that was that Lung Lung had to be sent back as soon as possible. Otherwise, her continuous disobedience would be seen as a traitor, and even Lung Lung's master would not be able to save her. I'm afraid it's not possible." Xue Jianfeng shook his head, looking troubled. "What's not possible?" Bing Wuqing frowned slightly. Regarding the matter of Lung Lung, he did not have a clear stance. He was purely carrying out orders. As long as Lung Lung was sent back to the archaic underworld, no matter what the final outcome was, it would have nothing to do with him. She has now completely betrayed the sect. Unless we use force, as a senior brother, there's no way I can summon her. Xue Jianfeng laughed bitterly, then added, "Even if it's Master Bing's order, I'm afraid she won't listen to it." "Really?" Bing Wuqing's aura was already extremely cold to begin with, and this time, the temperature dropped even further. Even Xue Jianfeng subconsciously hugged his arms tightly. Seeing is believing. It's a waste of my words here. Why don't you make a trip there yourself, Master Bing? We'll know if it's true or not. Shui Jianfeng's tone was rather sincere, and he looked fair and objective. He did not have the slightest intention of slandering Long Long. Bing Wuqing glanced at him. Although he did not have a clear stance, if Long Long really dared to disobey his orders, then she would undoubtedly be Bing Wuqing's enemy. When dealing with traitorous disciples, Bing Wuqing's principle had always been to kill without mercy. All right, lead the way. Bing Wuqing's eyes narrowed into thin slits. Yes, Master Bing, please follow me. Shui Jianfeng nodded repeatedly, and at the same time, he was overjoyed. He knew that with Lin Yi's stubbornness, he would never hand Long Long over to the Snow Sword School easily. And with Bing Wuqing's character, she might just make a move at any time. She was a true early-stage gold elixir expert, and Lin Yi was nothing in front of her. Under Shui Jianfeng's lead, Bing Wuqing soon arrived at the small island assigned to the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island. At this time, Xianijia was personally explaining the entry-level mental cultivation method to a few prospective disciples. When he looked up, he saw Bing Wuqing coming toward him with a cold aura, and he immediately frowned. Bing Wuqing, what are you doing here? Xianijia was slightly stunned. The circle of the small Jianghu in the far ancient era was not as big as that of the heaven-level island. The Blue Cloud sect and the Snow Sword School were both part of the 10 small sects and families, so they had a lot of communication in various aspects. Moreover, he and Bing Wuqing were both early-stage gold elixir experts, so naturally, they had met several times. Hand Lung Lung over. Bing Wuqing had no intention of making small talk with him, and directly demanded Lung Lung. What do you mean? Coming here to ask for Long Long? Bing Wuqing, aren't you being too arrogant? Xianijia's face darkened. Although they were both early-stage gold elixir experts, in terms of experience, he was far more experienced than Bing Wuqing. Moreover, he was the master uncle who was leading the team in the secular world this time, so Bing Wuqing had no reason to ignore him. Hand Lung Lung over. Bing Wuqing repeated herself, and just stared at Xianijia expressionlessly. Her attitude was so tough that it was a complete mess. Shui Jianfeng, who was standing at the side, could not help but feel pleased when he saw this scene. Although Bing Wuqing was not the same kind of person as him, it was really delightful to see Xianijia, the old bastard, being humiliated. Chapter 51:23. Looking at Xianijia, who stood in front of her without budging an inch, Bing Wuqing fell into silence. She had never been a patient person. If they were in the small archaic underworld, she might have already taken action. However, Xianijia's threat was not an exaggeration. No matter how daring Bing Wuqing was, it was still wishful thinking to say that she could go against the entire archaic alliance. I'm not going to provoke your Blue Cloud sect, nor do I want to fight against the entire archaic alliance. I just want to bring back someone from my Snow Sword School. Get out of my way. Bing Wuqing gave a rare explanation. Xianijia didn't move his feet at all. He squinted at him and said blandly, I'm sorry, this island now belongs to the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. It's your business to take people, but how dare you come to the territory of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island to take people without telling us? Bing Wuqing's eyes narrowed again when she heard that. The ice-cold aura emanating from her body caused the prospective disciples to shiver in cold. They looked at each other in dismay. Where did this monster come from? Standing next to him would freeze people to death. The archaic alliance could not be provoked. As one of the 10 small sects, the Blue Cloud sect was not to be trifled with either. After all, it had the Soaring sect and Xuanji sect of the North Island. Even with Bing Wuqing's pride, she did not dare to offend them directly. Even an early-stage nascent soul cultivator might not have the guts to go against such a sect, let alone an early-stage gold core cultivator. Who gave you the guts to shelter a traitor disciple of my Snow Sword School? Snow Sword School and the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island have always been on good terms. I don't intend to cause any trouble today. I just want to bring back a traitor disciple of my Snow Sword School. This is the unanimous order of all the senior members of the Snow Sword School. Xianijia, are you sure you want to interfere? Bing Wuqing said in a low voice. A traitor disciple. This was the first time he put this label on Cold. The situation forced him to do so. If he did not do so, Exionejia would not let them go easily. Exionejia could not help but raise his eyebrows. He had always thought that Bing Wuqing was an arrogant so-called genius. He did not expect her to be so eloquent. He had underestimated her. To be honest, Bing Wuqing did not have the guts to provoke the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Exionejia did not have the guts to provoke the Snow Sword School either. Even if the school could save his life, he would have no future in the Archaic Alliance. However, what gave Exionejia a headache was his grandmaster, Lin Yi. Judging from Lin Yi's previous attitude, he would never let Cold be captured by the other party. Now that Lin Yi had not returned, if he were to hand Cold over to Bing Wuqing directly, how was he going to explain to Lin Yi in the future? But if he insisted on not releasing him, Bing Wuqing's side would be hard to deal with. After all, he had no reason to forcibly protect a traitorous disciple of the Snow Sword sect. Not only would he offend the Snow Sword sect, but he might also be punished in the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island. At that moment, Exionejia was caught in a dilemma, and the situation fell into a stalemate. Martial Uncle Exion, if you can't make up your mind, why don't you let Cold decide for herself? Maybe she'll be willing to go with us? Shui Jianfeng suddenly said. Exionejia frowned. He had to admit that this was a compromise. If Lung Long was willing to go back with Bing Wuqing, then even Lin Yi would not blame him. Exionejia nodded and said, "All right, I can bring you to see her. However, it's up to her to decide whether to stay or leave. You can't force her." "Then let's go." Bing Wuqing glanced at Shui Jianfeng. To be honest, she didn't think much of this second-generation cultivator. However, what he said just now was rather quick-witted. If it weren't for Shui Jianfeng's words, Exionejia might not have agreed to it. As long as he could successfully meet Cold, it was entirely up to him whether to bring her along or not. Even if he were to force his way through, would Exionejia risk his life for an irrelevant Cold? After giving some instructions to the prospective disciples, Exionejia brought the two of them to another spiritual eye. The scene here was bustling with activity. Wu Chuntian was leading a large group of people to build a villa with a view of the sea. Beside the spiritual eye, a few elegant wooden huts had been built. However, they were only temporary. Wu Chuntian had gotten someone to design a bunch of blueprints. Even if these sky phase perfection masters were amazingly efficient, it would take at least half a year to build according to the blueprints. They were only at the foundation stage. Seeing that Exionejia had brought his people over, Wu Chuntian and the others came up to greet him. Exionejia would come over to check on them from time to time. Because of his relationship with Lin Yi, they got along well with him. "Elder Exion, why did you bring this guy here?" Lingshan frowned as she looked at Shui Jianfeng in disgust. The others looked at each other as well. Shui Jianfeng was a disgusting clown in their eyes, and he wasn't welcomed here at all. Shui Jianfeng was so angry that his entire body was trembling when he was stared at by the crowd with such undisguised disgust. If it weren't for Exionejia's presence, he would have slashed these reckless bastards to death with his sword. Unfortunately, Exionejia and Bing Wuqing were right in front of him, so there was no room for him to vent his anger. He could only forcefully swallow his anger. Song Lingshan and Wu Chintian were still confused. Lung Long, who was sitting among the girls and listening to all kinds of gossip, suddenly saw Bing Wuqing. Her expression changed drastically. She stood up nervously. "Oh, you're already at the middle phase of foundation building?" Bing Wuqing's gaze landed on Long Long. She couldn't help but feel surprised. Even with her powerful talent, she couldn't compare to Long Long's shattered ice physique. Among the disciples of the Snow Sword sect, Lung Long was the only one who could impress her. As for Shui Jianfeng, he wasn't even on the list. Lung Long was a seed with unlimited potential. This was the evaluation that most of the sect's higher-ups had for Lung Long. Although Bing Wuqing didn't agree with it completely, she had to admit that Lung Long was very talented. Now, only 2 months had passed, and Lung Long had actually broken through from the early phase of foundation building to the middle phase. This was the best evidence for that evaluation. Master Bing, this is also one of the evidence that she betrayed the sect. That Lin Yi had given her a lot of pills to bribe her. Otherwise, how could she have broken through so quickly? Shui Jianfeng tried to sow discord. Chapter 51:24. Lung Lung's face paled, but she didn't move her feet. She just stared at Bing Wuching stubbornly, gritting her teeth. Master Bing, I'm sorry, I can't go back yet. I said, go back with me. Bing Wuching's tone was unquestionable, and a strong and cold aura exploded from her, pressing down on everyone's heads. Although they were all sky-class complete perfection, the opponent was at the early stage of Golden Core. The difference in strength was too big, and just Bing Wuching's aura alone was too much for them to handle. They all felt like they were facing a great enemy. I don't know who you are, but Lung Lung will never go back with you. Just give up. Ingziyu jumped out and shouted. Her tone and demeanor reminded her of the delinquent girl she used to be. She didn't spend much time with Lung Lung, but surprisingly, she was the closest to Lung Lung out of everyone. God knows how they found a common topic. Humph, Bing Wuching humphed coldly. She didn't move at all, but that invisible, cold aura pressed down on Ziyu alone. Ziyu was also a sky-class complete perfection, but she had just leveled up. Whether it was in terms of strength or foundation, she was at the bottom of the group. There was no way she could withstand this kind of pressure. Her knees gave way, and she almost knelt down on the spot, but she gritted her teeth and held on. Lingshan, Wu Chuntian, and the others quickly shielded her behind them. Unfortunately, they weren't that strong either. Facing Bing Wuching's pressure, it was already good enough that they could stand still. They couldn't do anything else. Merciless Ice Force. Xianijia frowned at the sight. Although he had never fought against Bing Wuching before, he had some understanding of this signature ability of hers. Logically speaking, it was quite impossible for even a Golden Core expert to suppress so many people at the heaven-level paragon with just his aura alone. However, Bing Wuching could do it because her aura had already merged with the vital energy in her body. That was why her aura was so oppressive and aggressive. It was also because of this that the people standing beside her were shivering from the cold. Of course, Bing Wuching was definitely not going all out yet. Otherwise, these people would have been turned into ice sculptures long ago. In front of her signature merciless ice aura, there was no chance of survival at all. Looking at everyone's persevering expression, Xianijia was a little hesitant to step forward and stop them. However, Bing Wuching had not done anything overboard so far. She was merely using the lightest ruthless ice force to intimidate everyone. Even if he wanted to stop her, he would not have a good reason to do so. In the end, he decided to stand by and watch. At this moment, Cold Long had already stepped forward. Bing Wuching was here for her, and she would not drag everyone down no matter what. You should know very well what will happen to you if you don't return with me. Bing Wuching looked at her expressionlessly. He had no friendship with Long Long, nor did he have any friendship with Long Long's master. He also had no friendship with Xue Jianfeng and his vice-sect leader father. He was only carrying out a mission, that was all. However, after seeing Long Long today, he felt a little bit of admiration for her. No matter how Xue Jianfeng tried to sow discord, the fact that she could rise 2 levels in such a short period of time proved Long Long's superb aptitude. If it were someone else, it would be useless no matter how many elixirs she took. Of course, admiration was just admiration. Bing Wuching lived up to her name. He would not let this little impression affect his actions. If Long Long dared to say no at this moment, then she would be a traitor to the sect. He would kill her as he wished, without any hesitation. Long Long's expression was very conflicted. If she went back with Bing Wuching, it would mean that she would be separated from Lin Yi from now on. They might not even have the chance to see each other again in this lifetime. She had just found someone in her heart. How could she leave Lin Yi just like that? However, if she did not go back with Bing Wuching, everyone was bound to suffer because of her. These were Lin Yi's lovers and brothers who had gone through life and death together. They were all very friendly and warm to her. How could she drag everyone down because of her own selfishness? It was a dilemma. Long Long felt like she was standing on top of a mountain with no way out. One step forward and one step back would also be the same. As Long Long hesitated, the heartless ice pressure on everyone gradually increased. Ingziyu, who was the weakest among them, was the first to give in. She knelt down with a thud, but still shouted, Lung Lung sis, don't hesitate. We'll advance and retreat together with you. Yes, advance and retreat together. The others followed and shouted. Lingshan, who was the closest to her, pulled her hand and forced a gentle smile. From the moment you got together with Lin Yi, we are a family that will go through life and death together. You have no reason to go back with him, so you don't have to hesitate, understand? Lingshan sis. Lung Long was never a person who was easily moved by emotions, but she couldn't help but feel a little sour in her nose at this moment. She resisted the urge to cry and said, "And everyone, please help me tell him that I'm going back first. I'll wait for him in the ancient little Jianghu for the rest of my life." After that, Lung Lung ignored everyone's dissuasion and walked towards Bing Wuqing. She was more unwilling to leave this place than anyone else, but she had to leave now. Everyone was so loyal, and she couldn't hurt everyone because of her own selfishness. Bing Wuqing looked at this scene and nodded slightly. Since Lung Lung was so sensible, it was not a bad thing for her. It saved her a lot of trouble. As for Xianijia, who was standing at the side, he didn't say much. This result was a happy ending for everyone. He could explain to Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi. If it wasn't necessary, he really didn't want to cause any trouble. Watching Lung Lung walk behind Bing Wuqing, Lingshan, Wu Chuntian, and the others were agitated. However, they were all suffocated by the heartless ice pressure, let alone standing up to stop her. "Let's go," Bing Wuqing said, and turned to leave with Lung Lung. At this moment, a playful voice suddenly came from the small wooden house next to the spiritual eye. "Leaving just like that? Aren't you going to say goodbye to this old man?" Along with the voice, Lin Dongfang and Aunt Qing walked out of the small wooden house slowly, completely ignoring the heartless ice pressure that was everywhere around them. They walked towards Bing Wuqing as if there was no one else around. Chapter 51-25. What's more, how could an ordinary old man ignore the merciless ice force? At this moment, the power of the merciless ice force had pressed all the experts in the Heaven Stage exceptional realm to the ground. If they were ordinary people, they would have been frozen into popsicles and could not walk normally. Not only Bing Wuqing, but even Xianijia was stunned. When Lin Dongfang and Aunt Qing came, he personally came out to greet them. He thought that they were two acquaintances that Linny found in the secular world to cover his identity. He was an expert in the early stage of the Gold Core realm, but he did not notice anything strange about Lin Dongfang. He thought that he was just an ordinary person. Who would have thought that this person was so mysterious? Senior. Lung Lung looked at Lin Dongfang with a complicated expression. She did not expect that Lin Dongfang would come out at this time and walk up to her as if there was no one else around. "My daughter, my little brat is so worrisome. He runs around outside all day long and can't even take care of his own woman. As his grandfather, I can only reluctantly do it for him. You don't mind, do you?" Lin Dongfang smiled at Lung Lung, but Lung Lung hastily wanted to refuse. However, when she met Lin Dongfang's calm gaze, she didn't know what to say. Although Lin Dongfang's expression was calm, she felt that she couldn't refuse him. "I mind." At this time, Shui Jianfeng suddenly stood up and pointed at Lin Dongfang arrogantly. "Who are you? Do you have the right to speak here? Get lost." Although it was a pity that Linny was not here and could not see the scene of Bing Wuqing directly crushing Lin Yi, it was not a bad thing for him to let Bing Wuqing take Lung Lung away. Once Lung Lung was escorted back to Snow Sword Sect, she would definitely suffer a lot. After all, her father was the vice leader of the sect. Moreover, when Linny came back and knew all this, he would definitely go berserk. At that time, it was very likely that he would fight with Bing Wuqing, and he would still die. It could be said that since Bing Wuqing was here today, no matter what the result was, it was not a bad thing for Shui Jianfeng. As for this nameless old man who popped out and got in the way, he could just slap him to death. "Who are you?" Lin Dongfang looked at him. Courting death. As Shui Jianfeng spoke, he did not hesitate to attack Lin Dongfang. He did not know who this old man was, nor did he know how strong this old man was. Of course, he did not need to know that. From his point of view, all he needed to do was to kill Lin Dongfang with a single slap. With Bing Wuqing around, he was not afraid of causing trouble at all. No matter how big the trouble was, Bing Wuqing would be there to handle it. Lin Dongfang watched all this with a smile and did not move an inch. Xian Yijia panicked instantly. It was fine if Bing Wuqing used her merciless ice force to oppress the crowd, but if something happened to Lin Dongfang under his watch, he would not be able to get away with it. Once the powerful Zhenqi barrier appeared in front of Lin Dongfang, Shui Jianfeng's palm actually seemed to have hit an iron plate. His entire palm twisted into a strange arc. Not to mention himself, even the people watching from the side felt the pain for him. Shui Jianfeng was a foundation-building paragon. There were only 2 early-stage golden elixir experts present who had the means to defeat him. Of course, it couldn't be Bing Wuqing. It could only be Xian Yijia. Shui Jianfeng suddenly roared in pain, but he did not lose his mind. If he really dared to attack Xian Yijia in this place, Bing Wuqing would definitely not help him. That would be courting death. Shui Jianfeng immediately drew his sword in a rage. He moved to the other side of Lin Dongfang in a flash and stabbed at his throat with a backhand, intending to kill him with a single stab. How dare you? Xian Yijia was infuriated as well. Blocking Shui Jianfeng's slap without batting an eyelid was already a warning. He didn't expect Shui Jianfeng to be so arrogant. He didn't put him, the junior uncle master, in his eyes at all and dared to kill someone in front of him. Xian Yijia had the North Island's Green Cloud sect as his backer, and he was also the person in charge of the team's experiential learning in the secular world. After all, he was not someone to be trifled with. It was already his limit to let Bing Wuqing come and take Shui Jianfeng away. What Shui Jianfeng did was completely challenging his bottom line, and it was intolerable. Xian Yijia immediately followed suit. With his strength, once he got serious, Shui Jianfeng would definitely die. Of course, he would not kill him easily, but at least he had to make Shui Jianfeng suffer. Otherwise, as the leader of the team, his prestige would be tarnished. However, just as Xian Yijia's body moved, a hand suddenly stopped him. It was Bing Wuqing. What are you trying to do? Xian Yijia was shocked. He did not expect that even Bing Wuqing would cooperate with Shui Jianfeng. Was she challenging him and the North Island's Green Cloud sect? Bing Wuqing did not answer, but her gaze fell on Lin Dongfang with deep meaning. She wanted to use Shui Jianfeng to test this old man's strength. As for whether or not someone would die in the end, she did not care at all. As long as she did not really fight with Xian Yijia, killing an ordinary old man would at most cause a verbal dispute between the 2 sections. It would not cause any real trouble. Lung Long, Song Lingshan, Wu Qintian and the others were shocked. They all broke out in cold sweat for Lin Dongfang. Although they knew that Lin Dongfang was strong, Shui Jianfeng was a foundation-building full-cycle master after all. He was not on the same level as a sky full-cycle master. Could Lin Dongfang handle him? In the end, Lin Dongfang's next move quickly dispelled everyone's worries. One slap, just one slap. There was no shocking sound, but Shui Jianfeng was sent flying to the ground by this seemingly ordinary slap. He laid on the ground like a dead dog and did not move for a long time. No one knew if he was dead or alive. Xian Yijia was stunned. Even he couldn't handle Shui Jianfeng with such ease. Who the hell was this old man? Bing Wuqing was also shocked. She could see that Lin Dongfang was not an ordinary person, but she did not expect this old man to be so extraordinary. Even Shui Jianfeng was knocked unconscious with one slap. He was at least a golden core master. But how could there be a golden core master in the common world? If this guy was also a member of the Archaic Alliance, it was impossible for Bing Wuqing not to have heard of him. Even if she didn't know him, it was obvious that the Archaic Alliance had sent a few gold core experts. No one could hide it. Chapter 51-26. You're asking me? Lin Dongfang smiled, thought for a moment and said, These children's parents. Parents? Bing Wuqing's eyelids twitched and she frowned. Do you know what you've done? Of course, the children are being bullied, and as their parent, I have to step in and settle the matter. Don't you think so? Lin Dongfang spoke like a parent. You're provoking the Snow Sword School. Bing Wuqing humphed coldly, her expressionless face suddenly filled with murderous intent. She declared, Provoking the Snow Sword School is courting death. You can die now. As soon as she finished speaking, The merciless ice aura that was pressing down on everyone's heads suddenly dissipated. Only then did everyone have a chance to catch their breaths. Bing Wuqing did not do anything, but right at this moment, the sand beneath Lin Dongfang's feet suddenly sank. Without any warning, his entire body sank deep into the sand, leaving only his head on the ground. Upon a closer look, Lin Dongfang's entire body was covered in a layer of frost, and even the hole he was trapped in had completely turned into a chilling ice hole. Senior Long Long, who was the closest, quickly reached out to help. She only now understood that it wasn't that Bing Wuqing had removed her merciless ice aura, but that she had condensed the merciless ice aura that was pressing down on everyone at one point, and that was why such a powerful aura had erupted in an instant. But before Long Long could even touch Lin Dongfang's hand, she also sunk abruptly. Although she wasn't stuck in the ice hole like Lin Dongfang, she was still firmly pressed to the ground by the powerful merciless ice aura, and this was only a small portion of Bing Wuqing's strength. Even so, it was enough for Long Long to take a beating. I've overestimated you. That's all there is to it. Bing Wuqing looked at the frozen Lin Dongfang, and her lips curled into a disdainful smile. She thought that she had encountered a rare master, but it turned out that she was overthinking. It seemed that this old man was able to defeat Xue Jianfeng with one slap, not because he had the strength of a golden core, but because he was hiding something. As she spoke, amidst the gasps of Song Lingshan and the others, Bing Wuqing suddenly bent down and grabbed Lin Dongfang. This old man dared to provoke the Snow Sword School in front of her, and she had no choice but to twist his head off in front of everyone as a warning. Stop. This is the territory of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. If you dare to mess around, you will be the enemy of the entire Green Cloud sect of the North Island. Seeing that, Xianijia couldn't care less about anything else. He hurriedly condensed a vital energy barrier between Lin Dongfang and Bing Wuqing. It was the same move that made Xue Jianfeng suffer a great loss previously. No matter what, he couldn't let Lin Dongfang die here, especially under his watch. Bing Wuqing's movements paused slightly. She turned to glance at him and said, "Our Snow Sword School has already lost Xue Jianfeng, so this old man naturally has to die. It's fair and reasonable." Having said that, Bing Wuqing did not care about Xianijia's extremely ugly expression. She formed a claw with one hand and moved at an extremely fast speed. She broke through Xianijia's vital energy barrier in an instant and went straight for Xianijia's head. So powerful. Xianijia was taken aback. Both of them were experts in the early stage of the Gold Elixir realm. Although it was not strange for an expert of the same level to break through the vital Qi barrier, it was not a powerful defensive move after all. Moreover, the opponent could break through the barrier with a single point and gain the upper hand. However, it was the first time he had seen someone break through the barrier as cleanly as Bing Wuqing did. This fellow was probably one of the top existences among those of the same level as her. Xianijia was horrified. In a moment of desperation, he had only wanted to buy some time with the vital energy barrier. He did not expect that this move would not even be able to delay the attack for a moment. Instead, it was instantly pierced through like a paper window, and he was caught unprepared. The situation was extremely critical. Xianijia's only option at the moment was to attack Bing Wuqing with all his might, regardless of everything else. Perhaps he could save Lin Dongfang's life, but that would be tantamount to completely falling out with him. If things went awry, the entire Green Cloud sect of the North Island might be dragged into this. The consequences would be no small matter. Just as Xianijia was hesitating, Bing Wuqing's ice claw, which was condensed with layers of ice energy, was only inches away from Lin Dongfang's head. At this moment, someone suddenly kicked up from below. It was Long Long, who was pressed to the ground by Bing Wuqing's merciless ice force. She was an expert in the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. Although Long Long could not stand up under the pressure of Bing Wuqing's merciless ice force, she could still launch an attack even if she was lying down. Especially at this moment, when Bing Wuqing took the initiative to bend down, it was the perfect opportunity for her to kick Bing Wuqing's face. Imph, you're like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. What a joke. Bing Wuqing snorted in disdain. The little bit of admiration she had for Long Long vanished instantly. Her ice claw did not stop moving at all, while her other hand easily blocked Long Long's attack route. Bam! Bing Wuching pinched Long Long's left leg that was kicking at her with one hand, and was about to break it with the momentum. He would never show compassion for the fairer sex. Since Long Long dared to attack him, she had to pay the corresponding price. At least from Bing Wuching's point of view, breaking a leg was considered a very light punishment. If the higher-ups of the Snow Sword sect had not ordered him to escort Long Long back alive, he might have killed her directly. He would be merciless in his actions, or else he would not be able to live up to his name. However, before Bing Wuching could twist her leg, he suddenly felt a bone-chilling coldness in the palm of his hand. Because he had cultivated merciless ice force, his whole body was already like an iceman. However, this bone-chilling coldness was much stronger than his, so much so that he could not help but shiver. Ice-shattering constitution. Bing Wuching reacted immediately. She had never sparred with Long Long before, and her understanding of the ice-shattering constitution had always been limited to rumors. She had thought that it was just a little stronger than the average constitution. Now that she had experienced it herself, she immediately knew that she was very wrong. She was only at the middle stage of foundation establishment, but she could actually make her, a beginner gold core practitioner, shiver all over. The ice-shattering constitution was indeed nature-defying. No, she had to get rid of this woman. Otherwise, there would be endless troubles when she grew up in the future. Bing Wuching changed her mind immediately. Now that things had developed to this point, he and Long Long were completely on opposite sides, and he had never had the habit of leaving hidden dangers for himself. Cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots was in line with his nature. As for whether the higher-ups of the Snow Sword sect would blame him after this, he could not be bothered anymore. Compared to his own safety, what was a few words from the higher-ups? In an instant, a cold, murderous aura poured out without reservation. Long Long, whose attack had been blocked, felt that something was wrong. However, at this moment, merciless ice force was still suppressing her. She could not even stand up for a moment, and there was nowhere to run. Chapter 51-27. Exionegia, who was the only one who stood a chance against Bing Wuching, was still hesitating. He didn't notice the sudden change in Bing Wuching's mentality. The situation was extremely critical. Lin Yi. Long Long knew that she couldn't escape death. She closed her eyes calmly. Lin Yi's face appeared in her mind. She wanted to engrave Lin Yi in the depths of her soul. They were not fated to be together in this life. They could only meet again in the next life. Crack. A crisp sound of bones breaking could be heard. Long Long's heart trembled subconsciously. However, to her surprise, she didn't feel any pain. Instead, it was Bing Wuching who suddenly screamed in pain. Ah! Everyone was dumbfounded. Long Long quickly opened her eyes, and the scene in front of her stunned her as well. Bing Wuching's position had not changed, and Exionegia had not made a move either. It was just that Lin Dongfang, who was obviously frozen to the point where he could not move, had unknowingly placed his hand on Bing Wuching's ice claws. He even had a calm smile on his face, as if nothing had happened. Bing Wuching's ice claw had been bent into an extremely twisted angle. Just one look at it would make one's scalp tingle. No wonder he was in so much pain that his veins were popping and his face was contorted. You're not bad at suppressing people out of thin air. What's that? Lin Dongfang clapped his hands and climbed out of the ice pit as if nothing had happened. I'm going to kill you. Bing Wuching endured the excruciating pain. An ice sword was formed in her other hand out of thin air. She looked like she was going to attack Lin Dongfang in front of her. However, no one expected her to turn the sword and stab Long Long, who was on the ground instead. Despicable and shameless. Ling Shan and the others cursed in anger. Even Exionegia couldn't stand it anymore. He thought that although Bing Wuching was cold and heartless, she was at least an upright person. He didn't expect her to be this shameless. Just because she was afraid of Lin Dongfang, she attacked Long Long, who couldn't fight back. This person was a disgrace to the Golden Core experts. However, Bing Wuching did not care about what the crowd was thinking. In fact, she did not think that such a method was shameless at all. Since Lin Dongfang was more dangerous than she had expected, and she had even lost a hand, the best solution now was to attack the enemy's weakness. And Long Long, who was beside her feet, happened to be such an excellent cover. In his plan, as long as Lin Dongfang came to save Cold, then he would have the opportunity to kill him in one strike. However, Lin Dongfang's response was far beyond his expectations. Lin Dongfang's response was very simple. He was not angry, nor was he enraged. There was even a calm smile on his face. Without even looking, he directly blasted a punch over. Boom! Lin Dongfang's fist landed on her abdomen even though he had moved later. Bing Wuching spat out a large mouthful of blood, and her entire body curled up like a shrimp. She could no longer move and just staggered and fell to the ground. Even if he was beaten to death, he could not understand why the old man's fist was so frightening, even though there was not the slightest fluctuation of vital energy on him. It was so frightening that it could easily destroy a beginner golden elixir expert like him. Bing Wuching's face was ashen. Although she was not dead yet, she knew that she was already crippled, because Lin Dongfang's earth-shattering punch had directly shattered her dantian. All right, everyone, do what you need to do. Don't be lazy and hurry up and build the house. With this kind of efficiency, when do you think you can finish the work? Lin Dongfang waved his hand at the dumbfounded crowd. He did not feel that killing Bing Wuching was some earth-shattering event at all. Instead, his actions and demeanor were as casual as stepping on a bug. Not to mention Cold and the others, even Xianijia was dumbfounded for a long time. In the end, he choked out a sentence. This is a god, daughter, stay here. Regardless of whether you leave or stay, we have to wait for that little rascal to come back and discuss it. What do you think? Lin Dongfang said as he helped Cold up. Yes, thank you, senior. Cold nodded gratefully. Although Bing Wuching and Xue Jianfeng were defeated by Lin Dongfang, it was also because of this that she was in a rather bad situation. This was almost equivalent to completely breaking off relations with the Snowsword faction. Even if she went back now, she would be accused of betrayal. If it were anyone else, they would have been burning with anxiety. However, Cold was unusually calm at this moment. Lin Dongfang was right. No matter what, they had to wait for Lin Yi to come back first. He was her backbone now. This sudden disturbance was extinguished by Lin Dongfang in a matter of minutes. The crowd looked at each other for a moment, but soon returned to normal. Each of them went back to what they were doing. After all, they had all seen the situation when Lin Dongfang attacked last time. It was also a one-sided crushing. The only difference was that the opponent this time was much stronger. Now, in the eyes of the crowd, Lin Dongfang was just like Lin Yi. They were both unfathomable super-existences. As long as either of them was in charge, there was nothing to be afraid of even if the sky fell down. Senior Lin. Xianijia called out to Lin Dongfang awkwardly. With his strength in the early stage of Gold Core, apart from the nascent soul-old monsters of various sects in the Immemorial Alliance, there was no one else who deserved to be called a senior by him. Even if Lin Dongfang was the so-called grandfather of Lin Yi, he did not have the qualification to be called a senior. At most, they could only talk as equals. This was already giving face to Lin Yi, the Grandmaster. However, now, Xianijia was willing to call Lin Dongfang as Senior Lin. Even Bing Wuching was easily killed by Lin Dongfang. If one were to say that Lin Dongfang's strength was at least at the peak of the early stage of Gold Core, it was definitely not wrong for him to call him Senior. Oh, what's the matter? Lin Dongfang turned his head and looked at him. His tone was indifferent. If Xianijia tried his best to stop Lin Dongfang just now, he might treat him differently. But now, Xianijia's image in his eyes had been discounted. This kind of person was not worthy of complete trust. If he really pinned his hopes on this guy, Long Long would have been taken away long ago, and he would have become a corpse long ago. Xianijia did not notice this. Instead, he thought this was the demeanor of a master. After all, it was not easy to get close to a master. Therefore, he said respectfully with a bit of restraint, I wonder how we should deal with these two people. Senior Lin, can you give us some advice? It was only then that the crowd remembered that there were two people lying on the ground. Bing Wuching not only had one of her hands been destroyed, but her dantian was also destroyed by a punch. She was lying on the ground and could not get up at all. As for Xue Jianfeng, he did not move at all. No one knew if he was dead or alive. Chapter 51:28. However, after witnessing Lin Dongfang's unfathomable and terrifying strength, Xianijia would be out of his mind if he still dared to act on his own. It doesn't matter. You can let them go or kill them. You can do whatever you think is convenient. I have no opinion. Lin Dongfang looked indifferent. Then let them go? Xianijia asked carefully. Strictly speaking, Bing Wuching and Xue Jianfeng were here to pick a fight. According to the rules of the archaic underworld, there was nothing to say even if they were killed directly. However, this would mean that he had completely fallen out with the Snow Sword School. After all, both Bing Wuching and Xue Jianfeng were not insignificant figures to the Snow Sword School. If it was not necessary, Xianijia did not want to make things worse. Sure, Lin Dongfang answered casually. Okay, then I'll ask someone to carry them away, lest they disturb Senior Lin's peace. Xianijia let out a sigh of relief. If Lin Dongfang had been a little stubborn and insisted on killing them, he would not have been able to do anything about it. In that case, he would be in big trouble. Not only would he offend the Snow Sword School, but he would also blame the top management of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. The two of them were immediately dragged away like dead dogs. When the news spread out, not only the disciples of the Snow Sword School, but all the disciples of the other primordial sects who were out for training were also shocked. Be it Bing Wuching or Xue Jianfeng, they were both famous people in the small Jianghu of the primordial era. Yet, they were actually beaten to such a state. Finally, after being unconscious for an unknown period of time, Xue Jianfeng faintly woke up, and at the instant he recovered his consciousness. An intense pain that had been dormant for a long time instantly spread throughout his entire body, causing Xue Jianfeng to instantly gasp and howl endlessly in pain. However, what made him feel even more hopeless was that after the pain spread throughout his body, he could not stand up for a while. Once he forcibly operated the genuine qi in his body, the pain would immediately increase by a few times, making him feel like dying. How? How could this be? Xue Jianfeng endured the heart-wrenching pain and struggled to roll off the bed. Suddenly, an emotionless voice came from behind him. You can still get up with your meridians broken like this? You, the so-called number 1 Foundation establishment cultivator in the Archaic Alliance, is not useless after all. Martial Ant Bing? It was only then that Xue Jianfeng realized that he had been moved back into the room, and a figure was sitting diagonally in the shadow of the corner behind him. It was Bing Wuching. Bing Wuching didn't make a sound. She just sat quietly in the shadows, her whole body still emanating a chilling aura, but it was far less domineering than before. Instead, it had become a little gloomy and cold. Martial Ant Bing. Those fellows actually dared to treat me like this. You have to help me get justice. Xue Jianfeng suddenly froze halfway through his words. He didn't see how Bing Wuching's dantian was destroyed by Lin Dongfang's punch, but he wasn't blind, after all. He could see Bing Wuching's pitiful state right now. Her right hand was bent at a strange angle, and it was obvious that it had been crippled. Moreover, Bing Wuching's wretched state was exactly the same as his. From head to toe, it was obvious that her dantian had been crippled. That old man is unfathomable. I'm no match for him. Bing Wuching's tone still didn't change at all, but the eyes under the shadow were clearly filled with resentment. Ever since he cultivated a motionless ice force, he had never suffered such a huge blow. He didn't think that he would kick an iron plate when he left the Archaic Alliance. Moreover, he had become a cripple. If he didn't feel resentment, then he wouldn't be human. How is this possible? Xue Jianfeng was stunned by his words, and only then did he realize the situation he was in. Bing Wuching's right hand and dantian were both crippled, and she was now a cripple. His meridians were broken, and he was also a cripple. Escorting cold, with Bing Wuching's powerful strength and his help, should have been a piece of cake. He didn't expect things to turn out this way. Wasn't it too ridiculous? Then what do we do now? Xue Jianfeng asked hurriedly. The situation was completely out of control. and he was at a loss of what to do. Wait, Bing Wuching spat out a word coldly. Huh. Shui Jianfeng was stunned. I've already sent the news back to the Snow Sword School. If everything goes well, we can get healing elixirs, and we'll have stronger helpers, Bing Wuching said in a low voice. In the eyes of others, he was an arrogant genius expert, but in reality, he never cared about his reputation. Just like how he didn't hesitate to make an issue of cold when the situation wasn't good. Now that he knew Lin Dongfang's strength was unfathomable, it was only natural for him to ask for help from the Snow Sword School. He didn't hesitate or worry at all. What if it doesn't go well? Shui Jianfeng couldn't help but frown. Bing Wuching remained silent. She didn't need to answer this question, and she didn't know how to answer it. Now, she and Shui Jianfeng were powerless cripples. If the Snow Sword School didn't give them healing elixirs and didn't send stronger experts, they couldn't do anything. No, it won't. With my father around, the higher-ups of the school won't turn a blind eye. They definitely won't. Shui Jianfeng could only comfort himself like this. However, even though he didn't have much confidence this time, he couldn't repeat it again. After all, his father was only the deputy leader of the school. The primordial Jianghu, the Snow Sword School. The atmosphere in the meeting hall was heavy. All the higher-ups of the school were present, and in front of them was a letter asking for help from Bing Wuching. After hearing the contents of the letter, all the higher-ups of the school looked at each other. The content of the letter was really unbelievable. There was actually an expert in the secular world who could cripple Bing Wuching in one move. Was this possible? Of course, everyone knew that Bing Wuching wouldn't joke about such a thing. It could only be said that after 1,000 years, whether it was them or the higher-ups of the other primordial sects, they all knew too little about the secular world. The leader, Hong Qingyuan, tapped the table lightly with his finger and said calmly, "All right, everyone has understood the content of the letter. Tell me your opinions." Revenge. Of course it's revenge. Shui Liping was the first to jump out and shout. He was the deputy leader of the Snow Sword School, and also Shui Jianfeng's father. Chapter 51-29. Everyone subconsciously turned to look at Hong Qingyuan, but they could not see any intentions on his face. Not saying anything, not expressing anything, that was Hong Qingyuan's attitude. Hong Qingyuan did not say anything. Everyone's gazes then fell on the 5 elders who were ranked at the top. Including Hong Qingyuan and Shui Liping, the 2 vice-sect masters, these 7 were the upper echelons of the Snow Sword School with the most authority. The other upper echelons were either their subordinates or their disciples. They did not have any authority to speak independently. Cough, 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 cough. One of the elders suddenly coughed violently. It was the first elder, Qi Qianqiu. I say, Elder Qi, if you're not feeling well, you should go back and rest. If you stay here in your current state, not only will it affect your condition, but it will also affect everyone's discussion. You're the most experienced elder in our Snow Sword School, so you should at least be able to see the big picture, right? Shui Liping looked at Qi Qianqiu and said with some impatience. When the other upper echelons heard this, they all had different expressions. The struggle between Shui Liping and Qi Qianqiu had been going on for a long time. One was the powerful vice-sect master, while the other was the most experienced first elder. In terms of power, Shui Liping had a slight advantage due to his position as vice-sect master, but in terms of status, Qi Qianqiu was a notch higher. After all, he was the most experienced first elder here. Furthermore, he had been personally promoted by the previous sect master. Qi Qianqiu's status was only below that of sect master Hong Qingyuan. Even Shui Liping was no match for him. It was precisely because of this that there was constant friction between the two of them. A mountain could not contain 2 tigers. Sect master Hong Qingyuan's status was deeply rooted, but there had never been a victor in this struggle for the position of second highest echelon. Cough, cough. Vice sect master Shui, you're mistaken. Since this old man is the first elder of the sect, I naturally have to do my utmost for our Snow Sword School. Compared to the great affairs of the sect, what is this old man's old illness? Qi Qianqiu laughed as he coughed. What wise opinion does Elder Qi have? Shui Liping cursed inwardly. It was said that Qi Qianqiu's old illness had been left behind after he risked his life for the previous sect master when he was young. Even the best medicinal pills could only suppress the injury and not cure it. If one day, this old man's old illness broke out and he died, they would truly be thanking the heavens. It's not a brilliant opinion. I'm just speaking the truth. Qi Qianqiu smiled, then turned to the crowd and said, "Everyone, our Snow Sword School has been on good terms with the Green Cloud sect of the North Island for a long time. We know the style of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island very well. Do you really think that the Green Cloud sect of the North Island is arrogant?" Everyone looked at each other, and most of them shook their heads. The Blue Cloud sect of the North Island was famous for its gentleness, and there was almost no precedent of them taking the initiative to make trouble. Even when other primordial sects offended them, they would often turn a big problem into a small one, and a small one into nothing. If this was all arrogance, it was really unreasonable. What happened in the past will happen in the future. Elder Qi, you can't be that naive, right? Could it be that everything that happened in the past was all an act? This time, not only my son, but even Bing Wuqing has been crippled. This all happened in the territory of the Blue Cloud clan on the North Island. Could it be that Elder Qi is too old to hear clearly? Xue Liping sneered. Oh, so even Vice Sect leader Xue knows that this happened in the territory of the North Island? Qi Qianqiu looked at him with a faint smile, then turned to the crowd and said, "Everyone, why don't you think about this? If two people from the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island suddenly barged in and tried to capture people without any reason, what would you do? Teach them a lesson, of course." The reaction of the Snow Sword School's senior management was almost unanimous. So, in my opinion, it's too far-fetched to blame the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island for this matter. If word got out, it would only be a joke to others. After all, if we really want to talk about it, it's our people who did the wrong thing. Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng went to someone else's territory to act tough and capture people for no reason. It's normal for them to be beaten up. It's already very kind of them to throw back two crippled people. If it were me, I would only get two corpses, Qi Qianqiu said, looking at Xue Liping. The senior management of the sects nodded in agreement. Xue Liping immediately felt embarrassed and said sarcastically, "I remember that Elder Qi is an elder of our Snow Sword School. You weren't sent here by the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, right?" "What did you say?" Qi Qianqiu's expression darkened as well. Although the two of them had never been on good terms, Xue Liping's words had clearly crossed the line. It was no different from openly falling out. The other senior management of the Snow Sword School who were on Qi Qianqiu's side were even more indignant. They could not help but want to slam the table and stand up. At the same time, the senior management of the sect who were on Xue Liping's side were also agitated. The atmosphere in the meeting hall suddenly became tense. A single word of disagreement could lead to a chaotic battle. At that moment, Hong Qingyuan suddenly coughed softly. The two factions who were rubbing their palms immediately quietened down. Although these people only followed Qi Qianqiu and Xue Liping's lead, Hong Qingyuan, the sect master of the Snow Sword School, was not just a decoration. Once Hong Qingyuan was angered, even Qi Qianqiu and Xue Liping would tremble, let alone these people. Hong Qingyuan habitually tapped the table with his finger and said calmly, "We're all from the same sect. If there's anything, we can talk it out. Don't hurt the harmony." Qi Qianqiu and Xue Liping looked at each other and could only nod slightly. "Please forgive us, sect master. We lost our composure." "Continue." Hong Qingyuan waved his hand. He still did not show any inclination toward this matter. It seemed that he was ready to let Qi Qianqiu and Xue Liping fight it out among themselves. "Elder Qi, you said that this happened in the territory of the Blue Cloud sect on the North Island, so we can't pursue this matter?" But why don't you think about why Bing Wuqing and my son went there? If it wasn't for carrying out the sect's order to capture Long Long, the traitorous disciple, why would they come here to cause trouble? Xue Liping snorted coldly. As soon as he said that, before Qi Qianqiu could refute, a female senior management in the distance could not hold it in anymore. She immediately stood up and questioned without hesitation, "Who are you calling a traitorous disciple?" Everyone looked over. When they saw the person's face clearly, They all revealed expressions of realization. This person was Su Xiaodong, Lung Lung's master. No wonder she was so furious. Su Xiaodong, I advise you to pay attention to your status. Do you think a mere elder candidate like you has the right to speak in this kind of situation? Xue Liping glanced at Su Xiaodong disdainfully. You. Su Xiaodong was instantly furious. However, he did not know how to refute. Chapter 51:30. She was only the lowest-ranked member of the Elders' Council, and she was not even an official elder. At most, she was one of the candidates for the next generation of elders. She was on the same level as Bing Wuqing, a newly promoted junior. She had no right to speak at such an occasion. However, she had to stand up at this time. Otherwise, if Xue Liping really branded Long Long as a traitorous disciple, Long Long would really die a tragic death in the future. Even her master would not be able to save her life. Vice Sect Leader Xue, you are mistaken. Since Su Xiaodong is a member of the Elders' Council, she naturally has the right to participate in the discussion. Our Snow Sword Sect has always been like this. Vice Sect Leader Xue, you aren't thinking of changing the rules left behind by our ancestors, are you? Qi Qianqiu frowned. Seeing that everyone was looking at him with different expressions, Xue Liping could not help but curse old fart in his heart. He could only smile awkwardly and say, Haha, Elder Qi is too serious. I just saw that the other elders haven't said anything yet, and she, the lowest-ranked one, is rushing to speak. She doesn't know the rules, so I'm just reminding her. Qi Qianqiu looked around at everyone and smiled. It seems that the other elders have no intention of expressing their opinions. Since that's the case, why not let Su Xiaodong speak first? After all, she is Lung Lung's master. She has a lot of say in this matter. Thank you, Elder Qi. Su Xiaodong nodded gratefully at Qi Qianqiu. She was not one of Qi Qianqiu's people, so she knew that Qi Qianqiu's words were not entirely to stand up for her. More importantly, it was to prevent Xue Liping from getting what he wanted. However, no matter what, Qi Qianqiu had helped her out of trouble, so she owed him a favor. No need. I'm just speaking up for justice. Qi Qianqiu waved his hand and said, The Elders' Council has always paid attention to open speech. If you have anything to say, you can speak freely in front of everyone. Su Xiaodong nodded and took a deep breath. All right, I want to ask Vice Sect Leader Xue, who did you say was a traitorous disciple? Could it be Long Long? Of course. Based on her previous actions, such as colluding with outsiders to deal with our sect's eldest senior brother and publicly disobeying the sect's orders, isn't that a betrayal of the sect? Xue Liping said as a matter of fact. What happened to them in the secular world? I'm afraid it's hard to convince people with just a letter from your son. During the last meeting, we've also said that everything can only be investigated after Cold returns. Even if you're the Vice Sect Leader Xue, you can't just accuse others of being a traitor disciple for no reason, right? Besides, the sect leader has the final say on how to deal with Long Long. What right do you, a vice sect leader, have to overstep your authority? In order to protect Long Long, Su Xiaodong had made up his mind to throw caution to the wind. These words could be said to be merciless, and even Qi Qianqiu couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. As for Xue Liping's faction, they were all flustered and exasperated. What did you say? On the other hand, Xue Liping didn't show any anger on his face at this moment. Instead, he smiled with great interest. Interesting, really interesting. I've been the vice sect leader for so many years, but no one has ever spoken to me like this. Su Xiaodong, you're the first. The more it was like this, the more frightening it was. Su Xiaodong's heart tightened when he met his cold eyes, but he still braced himself and said, Did I say anything wrong? Since you're so eloquent, then this vice sect leader will listen to your wise opinion. Why don't you tell me, how should we deal with this matter? Or is it that we don't need to deal with it at all? Should we just swallow it like a good-for-nothing, and let Bing Wuqing and my son Xue Jianfeng be beaten up for nothing? Xue Liping said with an unfathomable expression. Su Xiaodong couldn't help but choke when she heard this. Xue Liping's words were obviously malicious. It was human nature for her to speak up for her disciple, Long Long, and others wouldn't say much. However, This matter was obviously not something that she, a candidate elder ranked last, could intervene. No matter what she said, she was overestimating herself and couldn't escape the fate of being ridiculed. But at this point, Su Xiaodong could only continue to say, "I didn't say that. This matter is originally a matter for disciples to gain experience. If any random matter needs to be personally dealt with by the sect, can it still be called experience? What's more, our Snow Sword sect has already violated the rules by sending Bing Wuching alone. Now, if we send other high-level members, what will the other primeval sects think? What will they think? If we really care about the sect's image, this matter is definitely not a show of weakness. If we lower our heads in front of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island this time, in the future, not only the 4 major sects and the 10 small sects and families, but also some other stray dogs and cats can bully our Snow Sword sect. This is an insult to the sect. Can you bear this sin?" Xue Liping snorted disdainfully. "Deputy Sect Leader Xue, you talk big, but you seem to have forgotten one thing. The Blue Cloud sect of the North Island isn't a single sect. It's on the same side as the Soaring Sky sect of the North Island and the Xuanji sect of the North Island. Provoking it is equivalent to provoking the entire North Island Alliance." At this time, Qi Qianqiu suddenly spoke again and said lightly, "Although our Snow Sword sect belongs to the Middle Island Alliance, we don't have much say. The Middle Island Pavilion has the final say in the entire Middle Island Alliance, and we're just a vassal sect. What do we have to compete with the North Island Alliance? Elder Qi, you can even say such words that boost the morale of others and belittle our own. I think you've really gone senile." Xue Liping shook his legs and looked at the sky. "Is that so?" Qi Qianqiu was not angry at all. Hearing that, he said calmly, "Yes, I'm indeed old. The world will belong to the young people in the future. Deputy Sect Leader Xue, you're in the prime of your life. If there's a conflict with the North Island Alliance in the future, why don't you take full charge?" Xue Liping could not help but choke. It was not a problem for him to fan the flames and stir up trouble here, but he did not have the courage to actually go against the entire North Island Alliance. Not to mention him, there was probably no one in the entire Snow Sword faction who had the courage to do so. Although this time our people met with trouble in the territory of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, they were the ones who harbored Long Long first. Everyone has their reasons. They may not be able to involve the entire North Island Alliance in this kind of thing. Moreover, our Snow Sword sect is not without allies. As long as we find someone to act in the Middle Island Pavilion, we may not be afraid of the North Island Alliance. Fifth Elder suddenly stood up to support Xue Liping. Chapter 51:31. Everyone chimed in one after another, and the entire meeting hall soon became like a market. It was noisy, and after arguing for a long time, no one could convince anyone. Enough. Xue Liping finally couldn't stand it anymore. He slammed the table and shocked everyone. He snorted and said, "If you keep arguing like this, you won't be able to come to a conclusion even if you argue for 10 days or half a month. In my opinion, let's settle the 2 most important things first. We can argue about the rest later." "What 2 things?" Everyone looked at him and asked. "First, send healing elixirs to Bing Wuqing and my son Xue Jianfeng. This is the top priority." Xue Liping looked serious. Of course, his son Xue Jianfeng was the most important. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so concerned. He paused and continued, "Second, aside from the Blue Cloud clan of the North Island, that guy named Lin Dongfang must be severely punished." The senior members of the Snow Sword School nodded. Xue Liping's words were reasonable. How to deal with the Blue Cloud clan of the North Island and how to deal with Long Long were things that could be discussed slowly. Only these 2 things could not be delayed and had to be decided soon. Even though Qi Qianqiu didn't continue to disagree with him, he wouldn't just go along with him. He turned to Hong Qingyuan and said, "Leader, I'm afraid you'll have to deal with this yourself." From the beginning to the end, Hong Qingyuan, the leader, had been watching from the sidelines. No one knew what he was thinking. Maybe he hadn't made up his mind yet, or maybe he was just playing a balance between Qi Qianqiu and Xue Liping. Anyway, he wanted to show that he was mysterious. Hong Qingyuan glanced at everyone's faces and said slowly, "Okay, let's talk about the first thing first. To cure Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng's injuries, we need a 5th-class recover pill. We have one in the Snow Sword School, but it's a necessary reserve for emergencies. According to the rules of the school, only people above the level of an elder can use it." Xue Liping's face darkened. Although Hong Qingyuan didn't say it clearly, his meaning was clear. Between Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng, the former was one of the candidates for the position of elder, but was not an official elder. As for the latter, in terms of status, he was just a disciple. It was only because of his position as the deputy sect leader that he had received so much attention. Neither of them fulfilled the requirements, so if they really wanted to follow the rules, there was no need to even think about getting a 5th-grade recover pill. But Xue Liping still wanted to fight for his son. After all, this was his only son. If he were to become a cripple, then there would be no one left to carry on the Xue clan. However, Hong Qingyuan only glanced at him once, and Xue Liping didn't dare to speak anymore. He could argue with Qi Qianqiu however he wanted, and to a certain extent, this was tacitly permitted by Hong Qingyuan. But if he dared to disobey Hong Qingyuan, then he wouldn't have a good time in the future. The second thing is about Lin Dongfang, who crippled Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng. Right now, we still can't confirm this person's identity. No one knows if he's an expert from the North Island Alliance, someone from the secular world, or a mysterious expert from some other place. Before we figure out his background, we can't act rashly. To be able to easily cripple Bing Wuqing in one move, this person's strength is not to be underestimated. Even among the Golden Core experts, he's not someone to be trifled with. It's best to be careful, Hong Qingyuan said. No way. Sect leader, our Snow Sword sect is one of the 10 small sects in the Archaic Alliance. It's fine that the North Island Alliance is so powerful, but even this old man who popped out of nowhere has to be so cautious and patient. If this gets out, won't people look down on us and say that our Snow Sword sect has no one capable? Xue Liping said hurriedly. If he couldn't get the 5th-grade recover pill, then so be it. He could still think of other ways to get it. But if Hong Qingyuan didn't agree to deal with Lin Dongfang, then there was no chance at all. Right now, all he wanted was to avenge his son. Oh, then what do you think, Vice Sect Leader Xue? Hong Qingyuan's tone was calm, without a hint of worry. In my opinion, with the strength of our Snow Sword sect, there's no need to be so cautious. That Lin Dongfang is at most a Golden Core expert. Our Grand Sect Leader, who is in seclusion, is a nascent soul-old monster. Why should we be afraid of him? Xue Liping said proudly. Is that so? That makes sense. However, if Vice Sect Leader Xue has the ability, why don't you ask the Grand Sect Leader to come out and avenge your son? Hong Qingyuan said with a faint smile. Xue Liping was immediately speechless. The Grand Sect Leader's seclusion was the top priority of the entire Snow Sword sect. Not to mention that he was just a Vice Sect Leader, even Hong Qingyuan, the sect leader, didn't have the guts to disturb him. As for avenging his son, that was simply a pipe dream. As soon as Hong Qingyuan spoke, the two matters were immediately decided. Xue Liping could only choose to keep his mouth shut with a resentful expression. Since things had already come to this, there was no point in him saying anything else. All right, since no one has any objections, then let's reply like this first. We'll discuss the other matters later. Hong Qingyuan knocked on the table and made the final decision. Soon, the reply from the Snow Sword sect's higher-ups reached Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng. The two of them hurriedly opened it, and their hearts immediately sank to the bottom. There were no 5th-grade recover pills, nor were there any stronger experts to help. The letter only contained a few superficial words of comfort and nothing else. How could this be? Xue Jianfeng was dumbfounded. Bing Wuqing was still huddled in the shadows, her expression gloomy. No one knew what she was thinking, but one thing was for sure. She was definitely not in a good mood at the moment. Let us recuperate? We don't even have the most basic healing pills. How are we supposed to recuperate? Xue Jianfeng was still unwilling to give up, and studied the reply from top to bottom, trying to decipher the hidden meaning. There's no need to look. We've been abandoned, Bing Wuqing suddenly said from the shadows. What? Xue Jianfeng was shocked to hear that. In fact, He had vaguely guessed this, but he still couldn't believe it. He shook his head repeatedly and said, "No, it can't be. My father is the vice sect leader. No matter what, he won't abandon me. Definitely not." Bing Wuching glanced at him. He was a beginner golden elixir expert, but he had been beaten into a cripple. In terms of impact, it was far more severe than Xue Jianfeng's. However, he had a much clearer view of his own situation than Xue Jianfeng. Chapter 5132. That was the reality. No matter how dazzling the two of them had been in the past, now that they were crippled, they no longer had any value to the Snow Sword School. The decision to abandon the two of them was, at least logically speaking, not strange. Instead, it was the most normal choice. Then what do we do now? Xue Jianfeng looked at Bing Wuching weakly. What do we do? What do you think we should do? Bing Wuching sneered and smashed the table into smithereens. The fact that she was able to do this with her current strength as a cripple showed how much rage had accumulated in her chest. Disheartened and extremely unwilling, this was his truest feeling at the moment. But even so, what could he do? Should we go? Xue Jianfeng still did not want to give up his last hope. Even if the Snow Sword faction did not give him a 5th-grade recover pill, he had to find a way to beg for it from his father. Otherwise, his life would be over. Suit yourself, but you have to think this through. With your status as a cripple, you can't even be compared to the most ordinary disciples. Anyone can step on you, especially those you've offended. Bing Wuching's face returned to its usual expressionless face, but her entire temperament had become even colder and deeper. It was obvious that she had been dealt a heavy blow. Xue Jianfeng hesitated. He was the so-called #1 in the Foundation establishment realm, and because of his father, the vice sect leader, he had always been arrogant and high-profile, and had offended many people. Just as Bing Wuching had said, if he went rashly, he would be trampled on by others, and his fate would not be any better. Moreover, if his father could get a 5th-grade recover pill, even if he stayed here, he would definitely send it over. On the other hand, if he couldn't get it, then it would be useless even if he went. Let's wait. Maybe there's still a chance, Bing Wuching said in a low voice. But what if there's no chance? Xue Jianfeng could not help but ask. If he could only be a cripple from then on, he could not imagine his fate. Bing Wuching glanced at him and said nothing. The headquarters of the secular world. It had been a whole month since the start of the primordial plan. After staying for so long, even as a peripheral researcher, Big Brother Feng had obtained a lot of valuable information. Unfortunately, he had tried all kinds of possibilities. However, he still couldn't find a way to safely send the message out. This feeling of having a stomach full of food, but being unable to take it out, could only be described with one word: constipation. The conference hall was once again filled with people. Big Brother Dafeng could no longer remember how many regular meetings this was. In any case, ever since the primordial plan was launched, regular meetings, big and small, came one after another, and he was already numb to them. Everyone, the progress of this month has been smoother than expected. Through the snowball effect of the Hunter Squad, we've already captured 15 Foundation establishment experts from the Archaic Alliance. This is a cause for celebration. Lan Xiaoru opened the meeting with her opening remarks. Thunderous applause rang out. Before the Primeval Alliance had been activated, everyone had been very nervous. They had always felt that this plan would be very risky, but now they no longer had such worries. The so-called Archaic Alliance was nothing compared to the central headquarters. Among everyone, the most excited person was none other than the bespectacled professor. Although Lan Xiaoru was the person in charge, the entire Primeval plan was proposed and implemented by him. Once the plan was successful, he would naturally be the biggest contributor other than Lan Xiaoru. In the future, he would really be above everyone else in the headquarters of the secular world. Not only that, but because of the efforts of the professors, not only have these 15 Foundation establishment experts been completely brainwashed by us, their strength has also been greatly improved. When these 15 people are gathered together, they are a very impressive combat force. They will play a vital role in our upcoming primeval plan, Lan Xiaoru continued. Thunderous applause rang out again. The bespectacled professor was excited, while Big Brother Feng, who was sitting at the edge, could not help but break out in a cold sweat. These 15 Foundation establishment experts had all been incorporated into the Hunter Squad. Among them, the weakest was at the middle stage of Foundation establishment, and the strongest was at the peak of Foundation establishment. Once such a Hunter Squad took action, the situation was simply chilling to think about. According to the intelligence, we have almost caught all the Foundation establishment experts of the Archaic Alliance scattered in the secular world. Even if there are one or two fish that slip through the net, it's not worth it for us to spend too much effort on them. Therefore, I announce that from today onwards, the primeval plan will officially enter the second phase, Lan Xiaoru said solemnly. The second phase? Everyone looked at each other. Although they were all the backbone of the organization, the primeval plan this time was highly confidential. Even they did not know the follow-up actions. The only ones who really knew were Lan Xiaoru and the planner of the plan, the bespectacled professor. That's right. Strictly speaking, all the actions in the first phase are only the prelude and foreshadowing of the second phase. Since we have almost caught all the small fish and shrimp that wander around alone, it's time for us to start moving. Our next target is Shenangjia. Lan Xiaoru's eyes lit up. Shenangjia? Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and their expressions changed. Is that the concentration camp of those Archaic Alliance experts? That's right. Now that everything is ready, it's time to take a bigger step. Lan Xiaoru nodded. Professor Lan, this seems a little too risky. Although we already have 15 Foundation establishment experts on our side, the Archaic Alliance has far more Foundation establishment experts than we do. Moreover, there's a Golden Core expert leading the charge. I'm afraid we won't be able to gain anything by rushing in recklessly. Everyone looked at each other. Although they didn't know much about the Archaic Alliance in the past, now that they had a group of Foundation establishment experts under their control, they naturally knew all sorts of information about the Archaic Alliance. Progress was smooth, but if they took too big of a step, it would be bad for them. Lan Xiaoru glanced at them with a faint smile. She thought to herself that these doctors were indeed top-notch in their respective fields, but if they were asked to take control of the overall situation, they would probably never be able to accomplish anything in their lifetime. They were only suitable for academic and scientific research. After all, not everyone was as ambitious as the bespectacled doctor. Chapter 51:33. Dr. Glasses, what do you think we should do? Everyone turned to him and asked. Well, I have my own plan. There are too many people here, so I won't reveal it to you guys. Anyway, you just have to do your part. The doctor smiled mysteriously. The group of doctors suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Their status here was not lower than the doctors. In terms of various scientific research results, they were far ahead of him. However, they were not as good at researching as the doctor. At the end of the day, they were just scholars, and the doctor was more like a politician. Their future would always be limited to the research base, but the doctor might become a real high-level boss. However, it was too early for the doctor to say that. He was still just a doctor. The only person present who had the right to ask them to do their part was Lan Xiaoru. At least for now, the doctor was far from having that right. Looking at the different expressions on the people's faces, the doctor suddenly realized that he had gotten a little carried away. He coughed awkwardly. Fortunately, Lan Xiaoru came to the rescue at the right time. Dr. Glasses is right. It's not suitable to disclose the next plan to you guys. You just have to do your job. However, I can tell you that the hunter team will be officially stationed around Shenangjia. Someone will be in charge of leading the team. Everyone was stunned, but they immediately realized that the hunter team's Foundation establishment experts were not suitable to act alone. Even if they had been completely brainwashed by the drug, there was still a certain risk. They were destined to be killing tools. It was impossible for them to become the real leader of the team in a short period of time. Therefore, someone had to be in charge of leading the team. There are two minimum requirements for the person in charge of the team. 1. He must be a member of the Archaic Research Group, which is one of you here. 2. He must be familiar with the situation around Shenangjia and know the movements of the various forces in the mortal world. There happens to be one person here who meets both requirements. Lan Xiaoru paused, then looked at Brother Defeng in the corner and said, Defeng, is there a problem? Huh. Brother Defeng was still thinking about who would be in charge of the team. The doctor was most likely to be the doctor. He did not expect Lan Xiaoru to call his name. He was stunned on the spot. You're the leader of the Red Conch branch. Among everyone here, you're the most familiar with the situation within the realm. If necessary, you can mobilize the people of the Red Conch branch at any time. Furthermore, you've been a member of the Archaic Research Group since the beginning. I don't think anyone is more suitable than you. Lan Xiaoru looked at him meaningfully. Only then did Big Brother Feng react. He was overjoyed and quickly nodded. Yes, thank you for your trust, Professor Lan. I will do my best until my last breath. He had been worrying about how to pass the news to Lin Yi. He did not expect Lin Yi to become the leader of the hunter group in the blink of an eye. It was a godsend. Very good. I've always thought highly of you. I hope you won't disappoint me. Lan Xiaoru personally walked over and patted Big Brother Feng's shoulder. This kind of treatment was really flattering. Even the veteran doctors were a little jealous. However, Big Brother Feng was puzzled. What did this woman mean? Was she really going to promote him? No matter what, it was not a bad thing to become the leader of the hunter group this time. As long as he found a suitable opportunity, it should not be difficult to pass the news to Lin Yi. As for what to do when the time came, it would depend on Lin Yi's decision. Everything was ready. With the 15 Foundation establishment experts of the hunter group, Big Brother Feng finally returned to the land he was familiar with after more than a month. Unfortunately, he still could not figure out the location of the headquarters in the secular world. He had to use a fully enclosed plane to travel back and forth. Some communication signals were blocked the entire time. The security measures of the center were impeccable. Of course, it did not matter. This time, he had obtained a lot of valuable information from the central headquarters. Especially since he was in charge of leading the operation this time, it was enough to give Lin Yi a big surprise. As for the specific location of the central headquarters, there would always be a way to find out in the future. Everything seemed to be going well, but unfortunately, there was a flaw in Big Brother Feng's plan. He was not the only person in charge of this operation. Nominally, the 15 Foundation establishment experts were indeed under his command. Unfortunately, the one who really made the decision was not him, but a man in black who accompanied him. Outsiders could not see his face clearly, and his every move was extremely mysterious. However, Big Brother Feng knew that this guy was none other than the Glasses Professor. The Primordial Project was related to the reputation and status of the entire secular world's central headquarters. Obviously, Lan Xiaoru could not really trust him to lead the team alone. The Glasses Professor was the real person in charge behind the scenes. Glasses Professor, since you have come personally, why did you let me be the person in charge of the team? Can't you just give the orders yourself? It's completely superfluous. Big Brother Feng could not help but complain. Superfluous? Why would it be superfluous? The Glasses Professor glanced at him and beckoned him to come closer. He said in a seemingly honest manner, the target of this operation is the gathering place of the Primordial Alliance's experts. That is no small matter. Even if we have a total of 15 Foundation establishment experts on our side, it will be difficult to guarantee success. If there is only one person in charge, what if they capture the leader of the group? Big Brother Feng suddenly reacted, and his face could not help but become even more bitter. So, I am just a cover to attract their firepower? Don't be so depressed. This is just a precaution. As long as you are careful, it will not be a problem to protect yourself. What's more, as long as this operation is successful, it will be a great contribution to you. In the future, it will not be a problem for you to soar. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I have specially recommended you to Professor Lan as a talent. If you are not willing, then forget it. I will find someone else. The Glasses Professor said with a faint smile. Don't. Since Glasses Professor thinks so highly of me, I, Dafeng, will not embarrass you no matter what. Besides, I am still the leader of the Red Conch branch. No one is more familiar with the situation in the country than me. At this time, it is not appropriate to change the leader, don't you think so? Big Brother Phone quickly smiled apologetically. Chapter 51:34. It's good that you know. Also, remember one more thing. From now on, call me Mysterious Man in Black. Especially in front of others, don't call me Dr. Glasses. Do you understand? Mysterious Man in Black? Brother Doffing was stunned. He thought that this guy was probably worried about exposing his true identity and didn't want to show his true face, so he came up with such an inexplicable code name. Little did he know that the reason why Dr. Glasses did this was to deliberately imitate the mysterious man in black on Heaven Island. Now, the headquarters in the secular world was imitating Heaven Island's every move. Not only did they imitate the technology, but they also imitated the staffing and methods of doing things. Of course, Dr. Glasses had another more important purpose for doing this, to show off. However, it was not entirely to show off. To put it bluntly, Dr. Glasses wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to transform. Although he proposed the primordial plan, if he kept using the title of Dr. Glasses, he would inevitably be preconceived as a scientific researcher in the future. After all, he did not have a background like Lan Xiaoru. It was impossible to really squeeze into the upper circle with just a little scientific research. Therefore, it was imperative to transform, and this was a great opportunity. Remember, don't make a mistake again, the bespectacled doctor reminded him again patiently. Yes, Dr. Glasses? Oh no, Mysterious Man in Black. What should we do next? Brother Doffing asked. He was just the person in charge on the surface. He had to ask Dr. Glasses for instructions for every step. If he acted without authorization and aroused suspicion, the consequences would be unimaginable. Let's set up camp on the outskirts of Shenangjia first. Then, you let Jing Taiyang explore inside and figure out the situation before deciding on the next step, Dr. Glasses muttered. Among the 15 Foundation establishment experts, Jing Taiyang was not the strongest, but he was the most reliable. This was because he was the first to be caught, and he had been brainwashed for the longest time. In the past month, various tests had been the most stable, and the side effects of the drug had been minimized. Even if he was released to act alone, there would be no accidents. If it were someone else, it would be hard to say if there was no one watching. Understood. Brother Doffing nodded and immediately went to make arrangements. A day later, Jing Taiyang came back from the depths of Shenangjia. The news he brought back shocked them. The mountain gate that was the gathering point for the disciples of the Archaic Alliance was empty. Jing Taiyang wandered around but couldn't find anyone. How could this be? The bespectacled doctor was puzzled. Could it be that the information provided by these guys is wrong? Big Brother Phone could not help but guess. He was naturally referring to the Foundation establishment experts of the Archaic Alliance who were brainwashed and controlled by drugs. After all, they were the ones who knew about the Shenangjia gathering point. Impossible. The bespectacled doctor shook his head decisively. There were bound to be side effects to this method of brainwashing control, especially irreversible damage to the brain. Even with the technology of the central headquarters, they could only minimize the side effects as much as possible, but not completely eliminate them. Take Jing Taiyang, who was in the best condition, for example. He looked almost the same as before he was controlled, but if someone who was familiar with him interacted more, they would find that Jing Taiyang was no longer the original Jing Taiyang. He had too many flaws. At the end of the day, drugs could indeed brainwash people, but it was only used to control people's hearts. However, there were always two sides to everything. Although drug control would have side effects and would leave flaws, there was one thing that other methods could not compare to. People who were brainwashed by drugs would not lie. This was the deepest level of hypnosis. If they could still lie under such circumstances, they would have to be immortals. Why? Although Brother Doffing was an external researcher, he didn't know anything about these things. The bespectacled doctor glanced at him. He was too lazy to explain in detail, so he casually said, "The information about the gathering place in Shenangjia was obtained from the mouths of these 15 people. Even if some of them lied, could all of them lie together? Then how could this be?" Big Brother Feng still looked puzzled. According to my speculation, something must have happened to these people in the Archaic Alliance recently. That's why they suddenly became empty. Jing Taiyang and the others have been acting alone and never contacted here. It's not surprising that they don't know about this situation. The bespectacled doctor analyzed. Oh no, mysterious man in black, what do you think we should do? Big Brother Feng had to ask. Next, it's time for you to make a contribution. You are more familiar with the situation in the country than I am, and you can use the connections of the Red Conch. I think this matter will definitely cause a lot of commotion. It shouldn't be difficult for you to find out the information. As for Jing Taiyang and the others, they will be stationed here first. I will personally watch over them, said the bespectacled doctor. Big Brother Feng's eyes lit up when he heard this. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. He immediately nodded and said, Okay, just watch. After leaving the station and leaving Shenangjia, Big Brother Feng confirmed that the bespectacled doctor, Jing Taiyang, and the others did not follow him. Then, he quickly called Lin Yi. After waiting anxiously for a while, the phone finally got through, and Lin Yi's voice came from the other side. Hello? Who is this? Although the voice was calm, it was all a disguise. He knew very well that this was Big Brother Feng's number. He just wanted to guard against the central headquarters, so he deliberately pretended not to know. This way, even if the people from the central headquarters used Big Brother Feng's mobile phone to test him, they would not find any flaws on him. At the same time, Lin Yi could not help but secretly rejoice. Fortunately, he realized that he could not habitually keep his mobile phone in the jade pendant space, so he would rather spend more spiritual energy to carry it with him. Otherwise, there would be no signal in the jade pendant space, and Big Brother Phone would not be able to find him. Boss Lin Yi, it's me, Dafeng, said Big Brother Phone quickly. You finally came out. How's the situation? Is everything going well? Lin Yi asked quickly. No wonder he was overjoyed. There was no news for a whole month. He even thought that Big Brother Phone had been seen through and died. He only continued to stay in the outside world with the last trace of hope. There were some twists and turns, but overall, it's going well. I have inquired about some information from the central headquarters. I believe it will be useful to you. Should we meet somewhere to talk in detail, or should we talk on the phone? Big Brother Phone could not suppress his excitement. What's your situation now? Asked Lin Yi. Chapter 51:35. Shenangjia? Lin Yi was slightly taken aback. He couldn't help but wonder why the people from the center would go to Shenangjia. Could it be that they were going to make a move on the Archaic Alliance? How could they be so bold? Suppressing the shock in his heart, Lin Yi could only say, It's too far. I'm still on the coast. Let's talk over the phone. Okay, I'll tell you everything I saw and heard in the central headquarters this month, lest I miss the important information that is useful to you, boss. Big Brother Feng said after thinking for a while. Okay, Lin Yi agreed. The central headquarters had always been an extremely mysterious place to him, especially after he found out that the tentacles of the center's forces could spread to Heavenly Island. He was even more eager to explore the situation himself. Unfortunately, he only tried a little on Heavenly Island, and it was only the Central Chamber of Commerce at that. In the end, he was captured and almost turned into a human sample. In the secular world, he didn't even know the location of the central headquarters, so he had no idea where to start. Now that he could learn something through Big Brother Phone, it was a good thing that he dreamed of. Big Brother Phone couldn't wait to tell Lin Yi everything that happened after he went to the central headquarters, no matter how big or small. After he finished, Lin Yi was silent for a long time. Just like when Big Brother Phone first went to the central headquarters, he also had many ideas about the central headquarters, but he never thought it would be a scientific research base. But then again, although this was unexpected, it was still reasonable when he thought about it carefully. If the central headquarters didn't have a strong scientific research ability, Kong Ming Ming wouldn't have that kind of high-tech equipment back then. According to Lin Yi's speculation, even the method they used to connect Heavenly Island and the secular world was probably not a traditional teleportation array, but a brand new channel integrated with super technology. Otherwise, the endless technological products of the Central Chamber of Commerce couldn't be explained. After all, traditional teleportation arrays couldn't transport high-tech products. Even if they were successfully transported, they wouldn't be intact let alone sold in such a large quantity. Good, very good. Thank you for your hard work. What you said is very important to me. Linny sighed. Boss, what are you talking about? This is my job. It's not hard work at all. As long as it's useful to you, boss. It's a pity that with my status as a peripheral member, I can only know these minor details. I never had the chance to come into contact with the core secrets. Sigh. Big Brother Phone couldn't help but sigh. No, you've already done very well. With your current identity, it's not normal for you to touch the core secrets. Let's not talk about the fact that the HQ won't let you touch them, but if they do, you'll have to be careful. It might be a trap. Safety first, there's still time. Linny comforted. Indeed, Big Brother Phone couldn't find out the two things he wanted to know the most. One was the specific address of the secular world's central headquarters, and the other was the specific method of connecting the secular world's central headquarters to Heaven Island. These two things were what he wanted to know the most, but it was a pity that these were the core secrets of the core secrets, and it wasn't easy to find them. What's more, although the things Big Brother Phone told him sounded trivial, when put together, it was enough to give Lin Yi a very intuitive impression of the headquarters in the secular world. This was very important. Yes, I'll listen to you, boss. By the way, what should I do next? Big Brother Phone asked. What the bespectacled doctor and the Foundation establishment experts would do next depended on what he said when he returned. The primordial plan? Hee, the center is indeed the center. They're really generous. Well, since we're here, let's not waste this trip. Take them to have a look. You can also get some credit for yourself. Linny thought about it and said, through the name of the primordial plan, he could vaguely guess that the people in the headquarters in the secular world didn't just want to get a group of Foundation establishment experts. It was very likely that they wanted to take the opportunity to extend their influence into the primordial underworld, just like Heavenly Island. If there was one, there would be a second. This wasn't impossible. Where should I take them to have a look? Big Brother Phone was confused. His understanding of the Primordial Alliance came purely from Lin Yi's words. He naturally didn't know many things that Linny didn't say. He didn't even know as much as the Central Headquarters did. With the Central Headquarters Intelligence Network, once they made up their mind, they could even track down the Primordial Alliance experts scattered all over the secular world. This was something that even the Supernatural Investigation Bureau couldn't do. Now, even the Central Headquarters didn't know anything about the Primordial Alliance experts' gathering place, let alone him. There's a teleportation array in the corner of the Mountain Gate's backyard. It can be used to teleport to the transfer point between the secular world and the primordial underworld. It's an archipelago in the sea. Since the Primordial Alliance experts aren't at the Mountain Gate, they've probably been summoned to the archipelago to cultivate. Linny reminded. In fact, when he first came out, those who were brought to the transfer point to cultivate were the prospective disciples who had just been recruited from the secular world. The rest of the Primordial Alliance disciples were still gathered outside the Mountain Gate. However, because of Xionegia's repeated orders not to cause trouble in the secular world, as time passed, these people gradually gave up on the idea of wandering in the secular world. Instead of staying outside and wasting time, it was better to go to the transfer point to cultivate in the archipelago. The concentration of spiritual energy there was rare even in the primordial underworld. Linny could even guess what they were thinking. Don't forget that Long Long had said that they would enter the Archean trials immediately after their training in the common world. That was the real highlight, and these Archean Alliance disciples were probably trying to recharge their energy and get ready to show off their skills when the time came. Transfer point? Is it okay to reveal this to the central headquarters? Big Brother Phone was a little hesitant. It's okay, just bring them there. Let's see what they're up to. Linny wasn't worried at all. With Xionegia, an early-stage Golden Core Master, there were only a dozen or so Foundation Establishment Masters in the central headquarters. It would be hard for them to do anything. Moreover, old Lin was there, so there was no need to worry. Lin Yi was very confident in his strength. Unlike Erguden, although Lin Dongfang drank a few mouthfuls of the spiritual spring water from time to time, it didn't have many restrictions on him. It was not a problem for him to leave West Star Mountain for a month. Otherwise, Lin Yi wouldn't have asked him to stay at the transfer point for a while, You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.